The red mono eye of a Zaku burns against the darkness of space. It is the 79th year of the Universal Century, 8 months into a cataclysmic war that has already killed half the total human population. It was Zeon that started the war, with a lightning attack that smashed the Federation fleet and caused one of the new space colonies to lose orbit and crash to Earth. The Federation has been on the ropes since then. Their lumbering warships and antiquated space fighters are no match for Zeon's new mobile suits, 18-meter-tall piloted robots called Zaku. But all of this is about to change, thanks to a secret Federation weapons project and some astronomically bad luck. Returning from a raid somewhere in the Earth sphere, a single Zeon light cruiser, commanded by mysterious masked mobile suit ace Char Aznable, stumbles by complete happenstance upon an experimental Federation warship, codenamed White Base, on a mission to the partially completed civilian colony Side 7. There, a secret Federation lab has been working tirelessly on a new weapon that just might turn the tide of the war. Char pursues the White Base and sends a squadron of 3 Zaku to infiltrate the colony and collect intelligence. Civilians living near the Federation facility are ordered to evacuate. Among these is teenage tech genius Amuro Ray, the son of one of the lead Federation engineers. With him are his friends and neighbors, Frau Bo and Hayato Kobayashi. Federation soldiers watch the Zeon cruiser, and civilians wait inside shelters for the all-clear signal. Char's infiltrators discover the facility and confirm what Char suspected. The Federation has developed its own mobile suits. Eager to win glory, like his commander, one young Zaku pilot attacks without orders, destroying mobile suit prototypes and killing the base's outmatched defenders with ease. The civilians, inside their bunkers, begin to panic. Amuro runs outside, determined to find his father, but instead he finds himself in the midst of a battle, dodging stray missiles while soldiers die just meters away from him. Near the spaceport, he finds his father working on one of the mobile suits, codenamed Gundam. They are interrupted by another stray blast, but this one hits a nearby group of civilians trying to flee. Frau Bo's mother and grandfather are among them. Overcome by rage and grief, Amuro climbs into the Gundam's cockpit. The Zaku open fire on him, but the Gundam's armor is too strong. He shrugs off their attacks. The Zeon pilots try to flee, but Amuro won't let them escape. He cuts 2 of them down. A reactor is breached. It explodes and tears a hole in the colony. Amuro's father is too close, and he's sucked out into the vacuum of space. The last of the Zeon pilots escapes, headed back to Char. The attack is over, but the threat has not yet passed. And Char makes a haunting observation. No one likes to admit to them those mistakes we make because of our youth.
Decimation. There are no pilots for the Gundam, no gunners for the defense turrets, no helmsmen for the ship. The colony is bleeding precious air through a breach that cannot be sealed. The ship's Captain Paulo is badly wounded by shrapnel while personally manning a turret, and command falls to the only surviving officer, 19-year-old Ensign Bright Noah. It is only his first trip into space, and now he is in command of the Federation's most advanced ship, far from any friendly forces, with nothing but a bunch of untrained civilians to operate the White Base, and some kid piloting the Gundam. He almost orders Amuro out of the Gundam, but Captain Paulo hangs onto consciousness long enough to remind Bright that, historically, there have been 15-year-old soldiers before. On the Zeon ship, Char reports to his commander, Vice Admiral Dozel Zabi, and receives his new orders: capture or destroy the Gundam at any cost. While he waits for a supply ship carrying more Zaku mobile suits, Char himself launches with a small commando team in normal spacesuits to infiltrate the colony. Once inside, he is spotted by Sayla Mass, another Side 7 civilian, out searching for survivors. She holds Char at gunpoint, but is distracted when he removes his mask. The face revealed is much like that of her long-lost older brother. Char escapes by jetpack, remembering his gentle sister, Artesia. Surely the young woman he just met is too strong to be her. While Char and his team escape, Amuro has them in his sights. His hands shake, his fingers won't respond. A scream tears itself from his throat. Shooting humans is very different from destroying mobile suits. As the White Base tries to leave port, Char sorties personally in his custom red Zaku, sending the Federation officers into a panic when they realize that their enemy is none other than the famous Zeon ace, known as the Red Comet. It's immediately clear that Amuro is no match for Char, but once again, the Gundam's superior specs allow it to survive the furious assault. With a single shot from the Gundam's powerful new beam rifle, Amuro destroys Char's wingman. Realizing that the Gundam wields firepower to rival a battleship's main cannon, Char panics and flees. Amuro has won the day against one of Zeon's finest aces, but acting Captain Bright only chastises him for continuing to rely too much on the Gundam's technological superiority.
A narrow escape. The White Base has fled the ruined Side 7 colony and is making all haste for Luna 2, an asteroid dragged into Earth's orbit and converted into the Federation's main remaining stronghold in space. Char's Musai pursues them, but at a distance and without launching any more attacks. Mirai Yashima, a civilian with a license to fly large space gliders and the most qualified pilot remaining aboard the White Base, guesses that Char must be waiting for resupply. She suggests an attack, while the Zeon forces are off balance. Acting Captain Bright summons all the crew and passengers to vote whether to attack or flee with all haste to Luna 2. Some older adults among the civilians vote to flee, but our heroes all vote to attack, even if Kai and Amuro hold their votes, until the decision is already clear. Char has made contact with the Zeon cargo ship, an older model, carrying only a fraction of what he requested, but it is all the Zeon fleet can spare. Zeon, it seems, is having supply shortages. Amuro, supported by cadet pilot Ryu Jose operating in the core fighter, launch a surprise attack on the Zeon ships while they're docked for the supply transfer. Char counterattacks in his Zaku, and though he may not be able to defeat the Gundam, he is easily able to keep Amuro away from the ships. Ryu inadvertently blocks the White Base from using its main guns, and Bright is unable to reach the inexperienced young pilot to order him out of the way. Amuro's earnest neighbor Hayato and resident jerk Kai roll out in one of the other new Federation mobile suits, a truly bizarre machine consisting of a Gundam torso on tank treads, appropriately named the Gun Tank. Working together at last, the White Base crew destroys the cargo ship, but not before Char's crew manages to collect 2 Zaku. Their mission accomplished, the White Base's team returns to their new home, where Amuro receives another dressing down from the acting captain, this time for underestimating Char and overcomplicating his tactics. This is starting to look like a pattern.
Luna 2, the Federation's forward base, and last space stronghold, ought to be a sanctuary for the White Base and its exhausted crew. After saving the Gundam and the White Base from Zeon, our heroes are ready to lay down their burdens. Instead, they find themselves staring down the barrels of Federation rifles, then thrown into the brig when Commandant Joaquin orders them all court-martialed for taking control of top-secret weapons. As for the refugees, he orders them to remain aboard the White Base until he can arrange transport to Earth, even though most of them want to return to what's left of Side 7. Bright tries to warn Joaquin that Char is hot on their heels, but the Commandant ignores the young ensign, who appears to be on his first and last mission. Joaquin refuses to believe that an experienced soldier like the Red Comet would even consider attacking the heavily fortified Luna 2 base with a single Musai light cruiser. But by now we all know that Char's strategies are anything but conventional. Once more, he sends a team of commandos in normal suits to slip through the Luna 2 defenses and sabotage the base's reactor. When Commandant Joaquin realizes he is under attack and tries to deploy his battleship, Char's saboteurs cripple the vessel, blocking the only exit from the base's hangar, trapping the entire Luna 2 fleet inside. Meanwhile, Char's cruiser hammers the base with missiles and beam cannons. Char's attack gives the White Base crew the opportunity they need to escape the brig, with a little distraction by Frabo and the orphans, and some synchronized space fisticuffs by Bright and Amuro, working together for once. They infiltrate the hangar and begin prepping the Gundam for launch. When Commandant Joaquin catches them, it is the dying Captain Paulo who convinces him that only the White Base and its crew of amateurs stand a chance against Char. Faced with the choice between letting them try versus allowing Luna 2 to be destroyed without a fight, the Commandant gives the order to destroy his own ship so that the White Base can exit the hangar. Free at last to join the battle, Amuro and the White Base defeat Char and destroy both his wingmen. But this victory is marred by tragedy. Captain Paulo dies of his wounds during the fighting. He is buried at space, and Amuro wonders about the fate of his own father.
The White Base has escaped from Char's attack on Luna 2, but space remains Zeon territory. They won't be able to rest until they reach the Federation headquarters on Earth, and that means re-entry. But while the White Base and its escort, a re-entry capsule dispatched from a Federation battleship, prepare to enter the atmosphere, Char receives 3 more Zaku's and makes his own plan to attack. At the most crucial moment, while the White Base is off balance, Char and his squadron attack. Amuro launches in the Gundam to hold them off. All the pilots know that this battle must end, one way or another, in 4 short minutes. Any longer, and they will be drawn in by Earth's gravity and burn up in the atmosphere. Amuro has improved as a pilot, but facing 4 Zaku's at once is too much for him. Every time he turns to focus on one, the other 3 attack the White Base and the re-entry capsule. He focuses too much on Char, exhausting his ammunition without landing a hit on the Red Comet. But with the aid of a new weapon, a spiked flail called the Gundam Hammer, Amuro is able to hold his own, yet he cannot stop one of the Zaku's from blasting the re-entry capsule. Its commander, Lieutenant Reed, is wounded and forced to land aboard the White Base. Time's up, and Char returns to his own re-entry shuttle to prepare for the descent. His last remaining wingman, Crown, is too focused on fighting the White Base and ignores orders to return. Amuro, too, refuses to return before his enemy has been totally annihilated. Soon they are in the atmosphere, both suits glowing red hot. The White Base is forced to close its shutters, losing sight of Amuro and his fate. As Crown's Zaku disintegrates, Char comforts him with the knowledge that he has managed to force the Gundam into re-entry, and now it will surely be destroyed as well. But Char is wrong again about the Gundam's capabilities. Consulting the manual, Amuro finds the section on unassisted re-entry and deploys the Gundam's heat-proof film. As the White Base reaches the stratosphere and opens its shutters, our heroes are greeted by the sight of the Gundam and the knowledge that Amuro has made it once again. For now, at least. Char's attack forced the White Base to alter its course and descend into Zeon-controlled territory. Char has already contacted Captain Garma Zabi of the Zeon Earth Occupation Forces, and now a massive contingent of Zeon troops is on the way to intercept the White Base.
After the Gundam miraculously manages re-entry into Earth's atmosphere, our heroes realize that the Zeon attack has pushed them off course, into a trap. The Musai capsule rendezvous with a Zeon attack carrier, and Char is greeted by an old military academy classmate, Captain Garma Zabi. Garma's surprise at Char's failure to capture the White Base and the Gundam transforms to excitement at this opportunity to prove himself. On the White Base, there is a hum of activity as the crew prepares to meet their pursuers. Lieutenant Reed and Ensign Bright disagree over strategy. Reed thinks they should deploy the Gundam immediately, but Bright knows Amuro needs to rest. Zeon forces the issue. Amuro has no choice but to head into battle. He and Hayato will operate the gun tank from the ground, fending off the Zeon fighter planes. Lieutenant Reed tries to take command, but Bright is quick to remind him, "This is your first time on the White Base. We have more experience than you." Reed threatens Bright with court-martial and calls him insubordinate, but Bright knows all will be forgiven if he can just keep the Federation technology safe. Amuro and Hayato are nervous but successful at shooting down a few darting fighters. Suddenly, a massive force of Zeon tanks appear over the crest of a hill. The gun tank is not mobile enough to take on the ground forces, and Bright, in a moment of unusual emotion, begs Amuro to return to the White Base and launch the Gundam. Catching him for a moment in the hangar, a concerned Frabo continues to do what she can for Amuro, handing him a nutrition drink before he enters the battle once more. Garma shifts his strategy, focusing on keeping the White Base and the Gundam from reaching the relative safety of the sea. Char watches the battle develop from Garma's ship, and we learn that he expected and even hoped Garma would fail, exculpating Char's own failures, and perhaps giving him the opportunity to make a heroic rescue. Struggling to control the Gundam in Earth's gravity, Amuro shoots down the aerial forces, but he is stunned by a barrage of heavy fire from the Zeon tanks and the mobile suits on the ground. In a frenzy of fear and adrenaline, Amuro charges, slashing and cutting with the Gundam's beam saber until there are no enemies left. Garma decides to retreat, needing time to reevaluate their strategy in the face of such a powerful new weapon. While the rest of the crew congratulate him and the orphans organize a celebration, Amuro succumbs to the pressure of so many lives dependent on him, the exhaustion of several days' battle, the sadness of losing his father and his home, and the grim reality of killing the enemy. He quietly shuts himself in his room, asking to be left alone.
The White Base is trapped on Earth, cut off from Federation forces with no way to contact them, and a massive Zeon army blocking their way. On the bridge, the crew debates different plans for escape, turning again to the issue of the refugees. Between damage from its many battles and the added weight of so many passengers, the White Base cannot return to orbit, and Kai reminds everyone that those extra mouths mean the White Base will soon run out of food. Lieutenant Reed wants to leave them on the ground as soon as possible. Never mind that they are in Zeon territory, but Bright refuses. It is their duty as soldiers to protect the civilians. Amuro has a plan. If they can boost the power of the White Base's catapult and launch a single core fighter on a ballistic trajectory over the Zeon base, it might just be able to reach Federation territory and summon help. He volunteers to fly the mission himself. It was his idea. If it fails, there will only be one casualty. He launches successfully, but the intense G-forces cause him to black out, and the activity is noticed by Zeon surveillance planes. Char eagerly launches on an intercept course. Meanwhile, the refugees have staged a riot, taking Fraubo and the orphans hostage. Bright tries to negotiate with them, but they demand that he land them at once, that he save them, that he take them somewhere safe. One tries to justify the kidnapping, saying that taking hostages was the only way for them to negotiate. But there is no time to resolve the situation. Bright is needed on the bridge. Amuro, unconscious, is not responding, and Char is closing in. Sayla's voice over the radio brings Amuro back just in time. He dodges, dogfights, wounds Char's craft, but a full squadron, 6 DOPS, closes with him. Bright gives the order to return to the White Base. Mission aborted. Kai snickers about Amuro's failure, earning him a crack across the jaw from Bright, and a warning, that sort of talk won't be tolerated. Now Garma and the Gao attack the White Base, and Amuro returns at once to the Gundam. Char switches to his Zaku, as the two mobile suits duel in free fall, and the White Base struggles to fight off attacking fighters. The refugees invade the bridge and stage a sit-in, refusing to move until they are allowed to land on Earth. For once, Char outfights Amuro, and the Gundam is forced to retreat, but a message from Garma chills Char to the bone. The Zeon analysis reveals the Gundam's capabilities may be far greater than what it has already shown. Back on the bridge, Amuro finds it still occupied by the refugees. He berates them for only thinking about themselves, before Mirai intervenes to defuse the situation. Thanks to her, Frau and the kids return safely to the bridge, and Frau, true to form, only wants to know if Amuro is okay. The White Base is running low on everything. There's little food left, little enough that Kai accuses the cook of hoarding, while the orphans steal food out of the kitchens. They're running low on ammunition, too, with barely enough left for one more engagement. When a communique from HQ arrives at last, it offers only momentary hope. It is merely an order to break through the Zeon encirclement and escape to the ocean. Lieutenant Reed snaps that the generals have no idea what's going on in the field. He even suggests abandoning the White Base. Amuro's worse. He hasn't had a decent night's sleep since the White Base left Side 7, and he's still not eating. He spends all his time in his bunk just staring at the ceiling. He doesn't feel like himself. He's getting paranoid. He snaps at Frau, his best friend, to just leave him alone. Later, he drags himself down to the mess, but there Amuro sees one of the refugees, an old man, steal food off the plate of a child. Overcome by guilt and shame that he's eating full meals while everyone else gets by on crumbs, Amuro gives his own meal to the child. Frau chides him to eat, but Amuro storms out. Zeon attacks, and over Char's objections, Garma sorties personally in his own DOP fighter, determined to win back his honor after his recent string of defeats. As the Zeon squadrons approach, the other pilots, Kai, Hayato, and Ryu, deploy the gun cannon and gun tank. Frau tries to convince Amuro to join the battle, but he refuses. She calls Bright in. Amuro demands to know why Bright fights, but the acting captain tells him there's no time for philosophy. Amuro retorts that Bright should just go pilot the Gundam himself, and Bright snaps that he would if he could. Amuro argues that he shouldn't have to fight just because he can, and Bright has had enough. He slaps Amuro, berates him, shames him, tells him to go ahead and throw his tantrum if it will make him feel better. But nothing gets through. As Bright struggles with Amuro, Kai and the others struggle to defend the White Base, but they are outmatched. Now Frau volunteers to pilot the Gundam, if Amuro will just give her the manual. Perhaps this gets through to him, but it's only after Bright mentions Char that Amuro emerges from his torpor. Char, he asks? Then, pounding his fist into a bulkhead, he curses, "Damn that Char!" At last, Amuro deploys. Relying on the Gundam's jump jets, Amuro leaps through the air, engaging the strafing fighters in close combat, even kicking one apart before hacking a wing off of Garma's DOP with his beam saber. Pursued by the leaping Gundam, Garma retreats, luring the rash Amuro into the Gao's firing range. He calls for a barrage to destroy the Gundam once and for all, but his frantic orders go unheard. Back on the Gao, Char has sabotaged the comm circuit. Amuro might have pursued Garma to the ends of the Earth, but in the mountains he encounters a lone Federation transport and its commander, Lieutenant Matilda Ajan, carrying the supplies the White Base desperately needs. She has come on a mission of aid at the personal request of the Federation's General Revel, and she will take the most injured of the refugees with her when she goes, leaving the white base refreshed and as ready to fight as it has been since Side 7. Even Amuro, love-struck on his first sight of the lieutenant, seems somewhat restored.
We open with the sun setting over the rubble of a city. Nearby, an untouched mansion hosts a Zeon party. Everyone fawns over Garma, not just as a dashing officer, but, we learn, as one of the sons of Sovereign Degwin Zabi, leader of Zeon. The local mayor, our host, has stayed on despite the occupation and his hatred of Zeon, wanting to help his people who couldn't flee. Char disdains the whole party, but Garma enjoys the opportunity to reunite with Iselina, the mayor's daughter, with whom he's carrying on a love affair. They contemplate running away together, but Garma would rather win his family over with a great victory, something that will convince them to allow him to marry who he likes. A soldier interrupts them with news that the white base has reached the last Zeon defensive line, and Garma and Char rush to catch them before they escape. While the white base flies low through the ruins of a city, Zeon forces in the Gao drop a series of blindingly bright flares, trying to find them. The base hides itself in the remains of a stadium, while the Gao attempts to flush them out by carpet bombing the area, incendiary bombs lighting up the ruins. Back at the mayoral mansion, Iselina tries to take a jet and run away to join Garma, but her father stops her. While the white base remains in hiding, the Gundam deploys to fight Char and the two other Zaku, with the goal of leading them into a trap. During the battle, Char notices how much Amuro's skills have improved. He also notices the white base in its hiding place, and decides this is the moment to take his revenge on the Zabi family. Char tells Garma the white base is retreating, and to follow him to pursue it. Instead, Garma is ambushed, the white base, gun cannon, and gun tank all firing on the Gao from behind. As the Gao takes fire and begins to descend, Char gloats over the radio, telling Garma to blame his misfortune on the accident of his birth. Knowing that there is no escape, Garma thinks of his beloved Iselina once more, before crying, "All glory to Zeon!" and aiming the damaged attack carrier at the white base itself. Before it can reach them, the Gao succumbs to the barrage and disintegrates, breaking into unrecognizable pieces. The sun rises just as the battle has ended. We are left with two people grieving Garma's death, Iselina, heartbroken and alone, and on Side 3 in the Zeon capital, Sovereign Degwin, stunned into silence.
Beyond the moon, far from Earth, Side 3, Zeon. Dozens of colonies, millions of citizens, and now the 4 surviving Zabis. As Admiral Dozel's cruiser docks at the capital, Zum City, he grumbles that they have built no new defenses in the 6 months since he was last home. Degwin, sovereign of Zeon and patriarch of the Zabi family, waits for him, along with Dozel's elder brother Giran and his sister Kycelia. Garma's death weighs heavy on Degwin, and he wants time to mourn in private. But Giran argues for a state funeral, one last opportunity to put Garma's popularity and heroism to use, and rouse the Zeon people's hatred against the Federation. On Earth, Iselina, free of her father, pushes her way into Garma's quarters. When Lieutenant Dorota, one of Garma's former subordinates, commiserates with her, Iselina demands that he take her into battle so that she can get revenge on the Federation ship responsible for her beloved's death. He agrees, somehow rallying enough crew to intercept the white base with 3 of the huge Gao attack carriers. But it is only the 3 Gao. They have no fighters and no mobile suits, only a little support from Char in a lagoon. And perhaps he is not so useful an ally as he once seemed. While Amuro in the Gundam and Ryu in the gun cannon engage the Gao in close quarters, where the Zeon heavy weapons are useless, Char manages to disable one of the white base's engines, forcing it to crash land in the desert below. The remaining refugees, desperate to survive and now convinced that they are only in danger because the white base itself is a target, try to disembark. 3 push past Bright and ignore his orders to return, but they are swiftly gunned down by Char. 1 Gao crashes, then a second. Amuro and Ryu retreat to defend the damaged white base, but Iselina, on the last Gao, seizes the controls and aims her plane directly at the Gundam, crashing into it and driving the Federation mobile suit back into the desert ground. Gao and Gundam both survive the impact, but the Gundam is damaged and unable to move. Amuro leaves his cockpit to begin repairs, and Iselina drags her battered body out onto the top of the Gao. She aims Dorota's pistol at Amuro, shouts that she will have vengeance, but falls before she can shoot. It's a long drop from the top of a Gao, and she does not survive this landing. Back on Side 3, it's decided. Giran will get his way. Kycilia favored his plan, and Degwin is too tired to fight it. As for Dozel, he is preoccupied with punishing Shar for failing to protect Garma.
As episode 12 begins, we learn that the aging sovereign Degwin ceded power to his eldest son, Girin, and only then did war break out. Zeon caught the Federation unawares, and their superior preparation left the Earth Federation helpless. The White Base, having escaped from Side 7 and defeating Garma, is now crossing the Pacific. In Zoom City, while crowds and dignitaries amass for Garma's funeral, Degwin sits alone, watching Garma's last video message. It is not until his daughter Kycilia comes to get him that he joins the rest of the Zabi family on the public dais. Back on Earth, the Zeon ship Zanzibar spots a ship they cannot identify, and Lieutenant Rambaral suspects it is the White Base. The beautiful and mysterious Lady Haman, Rambaral's lover, is intent on completing their mission, vengeance for Garma's death. But Rambaral is cautious. They only have entry capsules to support the Zanzibar. On the White Base, Amuro sits alone in his room, working on the backup computer for the Gundam. He acts normal enough when Fra brings him food, but Haro can tell that something is wrong, and Amuro eats mechanically, staring off at nothing. Bright is short-tempered and exhausted, snapping at his bridge crew and at the orphans. He goes to his quarters to rest, but his break is interrupted when the White Base crew see the Zanzibar headed their way. In an effort to hide, the White Base flies directly into the cloud formation of a thunderstorm. The Space Noids, Federation and Zeon alike, are frightened. Most of them have never seen or heard of lightning before. Mirai lands the ship, and Bright orders the Gundam, gun cannon, and gun tank to prepare for launch. Ryu, who will be piloting the gun tank, finds Amuro sitting in bed, staring blankly. Ryu has to shake him and slap him to get his attention, and Amuro comes out of it clearly dazed. They rush to put on flight suits, and Amuro briefly panics, feeling suffocated by his helmet. Ryu has to take his hand and drag him to the Gundam, forcing him into the pilot seat. Terrified by the delay, Bright contacts them to find out what is happening. It's rookie syndrome, Ryu explains, before Sayla tells them that ready or not, they are launching. Rambaral himself deploys in a new mobile suit, one we have never seen before, accompanied by 2 soldiers in Zaku. Amuro struggles, fighting frantically, but without the strategy and skill of some of his past battles. Despite the fact that they seem to be winning, Rambaral orders a Zeon retreat. He and his men return to the Zanzibar and leave the White Base and the Gundam behind. Amuro, Ryu, and Hayato return to the bridge of the White Base to find that Zeon is broadcasting Garma's funeral as widely as they can. Char sits in a bar, watching Garma's funeral on TV. He is approached by a soldier whose face we cannot see, who has been sent by Kycilia for reasons we don't yet understand. At the funeral, Girin tells the public of the evils of the Federation, dominated by elites and oppressing the people of the sides. He tells them that they have survived the war so far because their cause is righteous, and that Garma died to wake them from their apathy. He ends by telling them that they owe the dead victory, and the crowd erupts into shouts of Sig Zeon. Only then do our Side 7 refugees finally understand who their enemy is, and why they must continue to fight.
Ah, the beach. Sun, sand, ocean waves lapping at your toes, and the crew of the White Base taking a much-needed break. While Hayato shows Ryu a few judo throws, and Sayla and Mirai soak up the sun, Kai wonders where Amuro has gotten off to. When he learns that Amuro has taken a core fighter to go visit his nearby hometown, Kai grumbles about how everyone with a home on Earth is an elite. Elsewhere, in Amuro's hometown, it is blasted by war but still standing and still occupied. His childhood home survived too, but it has been occupied by a squad of drunken Federation soldiers, and his mother is nowhere to be found. He leaves, remembering as he does the day that he and his father left this house for the last time, and how his mother watched them depart, unable to reconcile herself to a life in space, even if that were the only way she could see her son. Outside, he encounters 2 more Federation soldiers, harassing an apple cart vendor, a woman around his mother's age. Amuro hasn't passed up a fight since he first left Side 7, and he's not about to now. He tackles one of them, and sets to pummeling the man, until the second soldier kicks him off. He's only saved from a worse beating by the apple seller, who pays the men with food to leave Amuro alone. They start talking, as Amuro nurses his wounded pride, and he learns that the woman was the mother of his childhood friend Komali. Komali is dead now, she tells Amuro, and so is the woman's husband. But Amuro's mother has survived, and she's gone to a nearby refugee camp to help out. Meanwhile, at the White Base, a Lagoon patrol passes too close for comfort, and Bright orders Ryu to intercept. He manages to shoot one plane down, but the second escapes, damaged, but headed back to a nearby Zeon base. At the refugee camp, Amuro is reunited with his mother, but at first sight, they both freeze. Neither knows quite what to say or what to do. At last they embrace, and begin to speak of their time apart, and Amuro's mother worries about the unknown fate of Temrei. Their reunion is interrupted. Zeon soldiers have come to investigate reports that a Federation fighter, Amuro's, landed nearby. Amuro hides under a blanket among the wounded and sick in the camp's medical tent, but his transponder chirps with a warning from the White Base about the Zeon Air Patrol. The soldiers drag Amuro's mother away from him, and they're about to pull the blanket off, revealing his Federation uniform, when we hear a bang and see a smoking hole in the blanket. Amuro has shot one of the soldiers with his pistol. The other runs for his jeep as Amuro leaps out of bed, pursuing him to the door and emptying his pistol at the fleeing enemy. Now Amuro and his mother argue. She calls him cruel and disgraceful, moaning that she did not raise him to be so violent. She cries out that war is no excuse for pointing guns at people. As he leaves for the core fighter, his mother screams that she is ashamed to call him her son. He meets with Kai in the Gunperry, and they test the Gundam's ability to combine with the core fighter in midair. Now complete once more, Amuro lays waste to the Zeon base. Watching from the ship, Bright shakes his head, disappointed at Amuro's bad judgment, wasting valuable resources attacking a base with no strategic importance. But he will deal with that in private. When the White Base prepares to depart, Bright meets with Amuro's mother to tell her how important Amuro is to the crew, and how many times he has saved all of their lives. That can't be true, she says. Then, is this really what you want? She asks Amuro before the ship flies off into the sunset. It's not about what I want, Amuro tells her.
At a Zeon base on Earth, soldiers go about a normal evening. Some watch a magician performing a USO-style show, others repair the base's mobile suits or go out on patrol. Some sit around, drinking coffee and complaining about the bugs, which they never had to deal with on Zeon. One soldier begins to enlist help for a plan. With the tacit approval of their superiors, but little to no material support, they can get a group of volunteers and try to take out the Gundam. If they are successful, they will be allowed to go home. Meanwhile, the White Base hides in the jungle and conducts repairs. Lieutenant Matilda is there with resupply, but no additional crew and no specific orders. When she explains that rookies come up with very original ideas when left to their own devices, Bright complains that the Federation and General Revel are using them as guinea pigs. Matilda counters that it is only thanks to General Revel that Bright is safe from court-martial and possible execution. And besides, he has also ordered Bright promoted. Amuro wanders over to them, eager to see Lieutenant Matilda again, and both Bright and Matilda admonish him to go back inside to eat and get as much rest as he can. As Amuro returns to his room, he runs into an irritated and jealous Frabo. Oblivious, he wonders what her problem is. The Zeon soldiers spot Matilda's ship and know that the White Base and the Gundam must be nearby. A single Zaku, covered by a Lugan and a group of unarmored hoverbikes with machine guns, damages an engine on the Federation vessel. For once, eager to launch the Gundam, Amuro quickly moves to fend off the Zeon force, allowing Matilda's ship to escape. But in his eagerness to take out the enemy Zaku, he is led into a trap. Swarmed by the small and highly mobile hoverbikes, Amuro fails to notice when they plant magnetized explosive charges all over the Gundam. When the charge on his shield explodes after being shot, Amuro realizes what has happened and takes the Gundam to a nearby clearing. Their plan executed, the Zeon soldiers retreat to the tree line to wait for their charges to explode. The timers are set for 30 minutes. There is some debate among the White Base crew about how to remove the bombs safely, and once they determine a method, Amuro volunteers. On the bridge, Fra is distraught. How can they let him do this alone? Mirai is stern and logical. No one is better suited, and they shouldn't risk more people than they have to. At the edge of the forest, the Zeon soldiers watch Amuro work and laugh over how brave and foolhardy he must be. Suddenly, there's a problem. The last of the bombs is under the Gundam's foot, and Amuro won't be able to move it in time. The bridge crew dash outside. Ryu hoists Hayato into the Gundam cockpit so that he can move the foot. Kai drives a jeep, carrying Amuro and the so far unexploded bombs away. Ryu drives a second jeep, picking up Amuro and Kai after they've abandoned the first jeep and the bombs a safe distance from the Gundam. The explosion is massive, but the White Base, the Gundam, and the crew are all safe. After the strain of the last half hour, the White Base crew collapse, rest, and try to recover. A van drives up full of young men, asking questions and teasing an exhausted Amuro before driving away. Amuro thinks that they are Earth people, and marvels at how lucky they are, how carefree and happy they seem. But Bright and Mirai realize that the young men in the van were likely the same men who planted the bombs on the Gundam.
And then pan flutes.
And then pan flutes.
Crossing the South Pacific, the White Base takes a moment to rest and ready themselves for the threats that still lie ahead. Amuro is practicing docking his core fighter with the other Gundam components in mid-air when the White Base picks up a Federation distress call. Amuro goes to investigate, finding a small island and a crashed Federation plane. He lands and finds the plane's two crewmen tied to their seats in the wreck, badly injured but alive. Although Amuro tries to tend to their wounds, one pilot dies, then the other. He is pelted by stones from the undergrowth and fires his pistol into the bush. When he tries to pursue his attacker, flaming branches rain down on him. Soon he discovers the enemy, 3 orphans, and they shout at him to leave the island. He falls back to the core fighter, but now a Zaku appears on the beach, and its pilot demands that Amuro surrender. Instead, Amuro leaps into his core fighter and tries to destroy the Zaku from the air with a missile. The Zaku hurls a boulder at the missile, and the ensuing explosion knocks Amuro unconscious. He wakes up in a hut on the island, under the ministrations of a young woman named Roland. She tells him to remain in bed until he's healed more, but Amuro ignores her. He finds the Zaku's pilot, a Zeon deserter named Kukuru's Doan, working in a nearby field. He demands the return of his fighter, but Doan refuses, well aware that Amuro will simply attack him again once he recovers his fighter. Doan tells Amuro that he needs this Zaku to defend himself, Roland, and the orphans, when Zeon eventually tracks them down. Frustrated, Amuro leaves to search the island himself, climbing mountains and diving in the water off the beach. Exhausted, he sits on the sand, where Roland joins him. She wonders whether he can even appreciate the beauty of the sunset, but Amuro tells her that nothing is beautiful during war. He demands to know how it is that Doan has deceived the orphans into seeing him as a protector, but Roland tells him she doesn't know what he's talking about. Amuro returns to the search in the morning, but instead of his core fighter, he spots a lagoon approaching the island, carrying a single Zaku. Zeon has come for Doan at last. But in a stroke of luck, the white base has detected the lagoon and is approaching right behind it. Doan leads Amuro to a hidden cave behind a waterfall where the core fighter and the Zaku are stored, and together they emerge to defend the island. Amuro docks with the Gundam and destroys the lagoon, but Doan stops him from finishing off the remaining Zaku. He takes this moment to reveal that it was he who killed the orphans' parents, and that he deserted from the Zeon army after he was ordered to kill them as well. Declaring, "I'll show you Mobile Suit martial arts," he charges at the enemy Zaku and punches it into the sea while Amuro watches, in awe. Though the enemy has been defeated, Amuro tells Doan that he still has the scent of battle on him, and that it will continue drawing enemies to them until it is cleansed. Using the Gundam, he picks up Doan's Zaku and hurls it out into the ocean. The orphans protest that Amuro has thrown away their only means of protection, but Doan smiles and says that Amuro has done a very good thing.
The White Base travels west across Central Asia, buffeted by storms and unable to contact Federation HQ. They reach the rendezvous point, but there is no sign of their contact, and the crew keep constant watch. A jeep appears out of the storm, and Bright, accompanied by Ryu and Hayato, goes to investigate. It is their contact, injured and exhausted, but with instructions from General Revel that they are to cross the Caspian Sea and participate in Odessa Day, an operation 5 days hence, to seize strategic mines currently held by Zeon's Captain McVeigh. An earlier combat ruined the White Base's stores of salt, and they are now running dangerously low. Bright determines they will go to Lob Lake, a salt lake not far from their current location, to replenish their stores before continuing west. Rambaral and Haman continue their pursuit of the White Base, checking in with the local captain, McVeigh, for information and support. McVeigh avoids speaking to them, concerned that through Rambaral, Dozo might learn the truth about the mines. Arriving at Lob Lake, the White Base crew discover nothing but sand and a dried-up lake bed. Their maps are out of date, and the mysterious Lob Lake moves! They have no choice but to change their heading, towards the lake's other possible location. En route, they are approached by a fast-moving ship they cannot identify, Rambaral's Gallop. As everyone heads to battle stations, and the mobile suits are made ready, Sayla steals the Gundam, lying to the crew about having special orders, and takes the Gundam to the battlefield. The Gallop deploys its own mobile suits, Rambaral in the Goof and Kozin and Akus in Zaku. Amuro in the gun cannon tries to cover Sayla's retreat, but Sayla will not leave the battlefield until she can contact a Zeon soldier. Rambaral hides the Goof in the sand, tricking Sayla into a trap. Using the heat rod to destroy one of the Gundam's feet, he and his men try to capture the partially disabled mobile suit. Akus begins destroying the Gundam's cameras, rendering Sayla mostly blind inside the cockpit. She panics, struggling to get free. Just in time, Amuro arrives in the gun cannon and destroys Akus's Zaku, freeing Sayla and the Gundam. Shaken by Akus's death, Rambaral orders a retreat and moves to rendezvous with the Gallop. However, Amuro disables and captures the one remaining Zaku, with Kozin still inside. Back on the bridge, Sayla tells Bright and Mirai she wanted to prove she could fight as well as the men, but Bright doesn't seem to believe her. They must make an example of her, and she is given 3 days of solitary confinement as punishment. "Fine by me," is Sayla's calm reply. As Ryu escorts her to her cell, they run into Frabo and a few others, taking food to the prisoner. Sayla offers to take it in herself, and it is then that we learn the real reason she stole the Gundam, the real reason she needs to speak to a Zeon soldier. Whispering to avoid being heard by the White Base crew, she asks for news of Char. Once alone in her cell, Sayla cries tears of relief. Her brother is alive. As the episode draws to a close, the White Base finally makes it to Lob Lake, their salt crisis solved.
The White Base flies across the desert in a rare moment of quiet. Amuro is on the bridge, entering combat data into the computer, trying to simulate Ramba Ral's new goof. Sayla is still in the brig after stealing the Gundam in a cell neighboring the captured Kozuns. Across the desert, we get a new insight into Ral's motivations for chasing the White Base. He's after the Special 2 rank promotion for avenging Garma, but not for his own benefit. He cares more that the promotion will secure the futures of his subordinates and of his lover, Haman. As it travels, the White Base stumbles on a mine under the command of Makuve, one of Cassilia's subordinates. Bright orders Amuro to launch in the Gundam, but Amuro believes he understands tactics better than Bright. Ignoring his orders, he sorties with Hayato in the gun tank instead of the Gundam. During the battle, Kozun escapes. He offers to break Sayla out as well, but she alerts Bright and he orders her released so she can chase the escapee. Kozun finds a radio room and sends Ramba Ral a detailed report on the White Base's fighting strength. When the White Base's operators shut down the comm circuit, he heads for an airlock. Sayla and Omer follow close behind. He locks the door and Omer, carrying a bazooka, shoulders Sayla aside. He blasts the door open, knocking Kozun out into the open air. Back on the field, it appears that Amuro was correct. The gun tank's superior firepower is winning against the mine's defenses. But then, Ramba Ral and his mobile suit team arrive on the battlefield. Bright orders Kai to sortie in the gun cannon and cover the gun tank's retreat. Once Amuro launches in the Gundam, the White Base crew barely manages to avoid defeat. It is a lucky shot from the White Base's cannons that damages the Goof's joints and forces Ramba Ral to retreat. Bright confronts Amuro about his insubordination, but he seems unusually restrained. Amuro returns to the hangar to rethink his battle strategies. He has realized that it is Ral's ability as a pilot, not the Goof, that he needs to study. Close to the comforting presence of the Gundam, he nods off. Bright and Mirai, in the midst of a tense discussion about Amuro, enter the hangar, unaware that the young man is sleeping nearby. In ignoring Bright's orders, Amuro endangered the rest of the crew. Mirai defends Amuro, saying that he is doing his best, but Bright remains unconvinced. Still, Bright seems unwilling to take action unless Mirai agrees with his decision. Amuro stirs, and he overhears Bright proposing to take him off of the Gundam, permanently. A moment later, we see Amuro, now dressed in his civilian clothing, carrying a bag. When Frau asks him where he is going, he declares that he is no longer necessary and runs from her. A moment later, an alarm wakes Bright in his bunk. Amuro has launched in the Gundam without permission. As the episode ends, we see only the Gundam's back receding into the distance of the night. The White Base is left tiny and alone in the skies without the Gundam to protect it.
In a desolate and abandoned desert city, Amuro hides out with the Gundam. As he stares into the night, an unfamiliar Zeon ship, bristling with guns and carrying Cassilia and McVeigh, flies low overhead. Back at the White Base, Hayato wonders what they will do if Amuro returns. Kai points out that deserters are executed, and while Ryu assures Frabo they would never do that to Amuro, Sayla and Bright maintain that it is an option. While Fra is horrified and exclaims that she can't very well try to convince him to come back only to be executed, even she has to admit that Amuro has really messed up this time. Full of conflicting feelings, Fra sets out in a dirt buggy looking for Amuro. Mirai and Ryu's promises to keep Amuro safe replaying in her head. She tracks the Gundam by its footprints and finds Amuro sheltering in an abandoned building. Confronted by Fra, he refuses to admit he's done anything wrong and resents what he sees as the crew's concern for the Gundam but not for him. Fra accuses him of running away again, to which he replies, "You can't possibly understand me," before running away again. Fra is following him when they happen upon a Zeon mining facility. Amuro listens in on the Zeon command center, overhearing McVeigh and Cassilia discuss the mine's importance, not just for the war but also in Zeon politics. While Fra goes to inform the White Base of the mine's location, Amuro decides that surely this is the mine the Federation plans to attack on Odessa Day. He sets out to destroy it single-handedly. That'll show Bright and Mirai. Amuro fights fiercely but with little strategy, almost succumbing to an artillery barrage from the tanks and turrets guarding the mine. Under this surprise attack by the Gundam, Cassilia and McVeigh decide to test a new weapon, the Adzam Leader. The Gundam is incapacitated, but McVeigh waits too long to finish it. While the leader weapon totally disabled the mobile suits it was tested on, it only temporarily shut down the Gundam, and the moment it turns off, Amuro is able to attack again. Realizing they've been beaten, Caecilia orders McVeigh to retreat and to destroy the mine to prevent state secrets falling into Federation hands. Amuro is pleased with himself for destroying the mine, thinking that he's accomplished alone what the Federation planned to use their whole strength to achieve. But as he explores the ruins, searching for information amongst the mangled computers, he finds records indicating that this is Mine 102. There are in fact dozens more facilities just like this one. Outside, he finds a wounded Zeon soldier and assures him that someone, Federation or Zeon, will be there soon. Although Amuro is not in uniform, the soldier guesses that he is the mobile suit pilot, and ruefully tells him, "Don't go easy on your enemy, you don't have enough lives for that." By the time the White Base arrives, Amuro is long gone. Ryu laments that with this attack, Amuro has put the Zeon forces on guard and endangered the Odessa Day operation. As Fra sets off to look for Amuro again, she thinks to herself, "He has no idea how I feel."
Amuro wanders the desert, searching for some place to replenish his supplies. He has left the Gundam hidden in a sand dune. As he stumbles upon an oasis town called Sodden, we learn he is at least experiencing a feeling similar to regret for abandoning the White Base. He finds a bar where he can get a glass of water, but his drink is interrupted by the arrival of Ramba Ral, Hamon, and a squad of Zeon soldiers, along with 2 flatbed trucks carrying mobile suits. Hamon orders food for her troops, and an extra meal for Amuro, but he refuses her hospitality. Ramba wonders aloud whether this teenaged boy is the kind of person that interests Hamon, and then he too invites Amuro to join them. But a moment later, a soldier bursts in, holding Fraubau at gunpoint. Catching the look of recognition that passes between Fra and Amuro, Ramba pulls open the boy's cloak and reveals the hidden pistol he's been clutching this whole time. Now even more impressed than before, Ramba merely laughs and orders the 2 of them released. On the way back, Fra and Amuro very nearly talk about their feelings, but somehow they always seem to say the wrong things in the wrong way to each other. Amuro runs away again, and Frau laments that they are growing further and further apart. He returns to the Gundam, she to the White Base. But Ramba Ral is no fool. One of his men has been trailing Fraubo since she left town. Now he knows the location of the White Base, and launches an all-out attack with his limited forces. Without Amuro and the Gundam, the White Base's defenders are outmatched. Ryu and Hayato sortie in the gun tank, but a missile strikes the treads and renders it immobile. The Zaku leaves them essentially useless, and moves to attack the White Base itself, as Ramba Ral's goof overwhelms Kai and the gun cannon. Desperate now, Hayato ejects the top half of the gun tank, making himself a sitting duck, but allowing Ryu to take the core fighter and search for Amuro. The Zeon mobile suits attack the White Base itself, and they are now too short-handed even to man all their guns. So instead, it is Mirai who makes the ship itself into a weapon, incinerating the attacking Zaku and its pilot, Stetch, with the White Base's thrusters, before performing a barrel roll with the massive ship in order to shake off the goof. And now Amuro is here. Ryu found him nearby, already engaged with Hamon and the Gallop. He empties his rifle, firing at the goof, but Ramba dodges every shot with ease. Now they draw their blades and clash. Amuro charges, and Ramba cuts clean through the Gundam's shield, but Amuro uses the opportunity to cut open the goof's chest, revealing Ramba Ral inside. A heartbeat later, Ramba returns the favor, and now the 2 pilots are face to face, close enough to shout invective at each other. Another clash, and this time, each is fully committed. Amuro dodges Ramba's strike, disarms the goof by cutting off its hands, and then punctures its reactor. Ramba escapes, grappling onto the Gundam and swinging to safety, with one parting taunt. "Remember that it was only the strength of your mobile suit, not your own ability, that won that duel." We close on Amuro in the brig on the White Base. He has returned, but nothing has been forgiven. He screams at them to let him explain, but no one is listening. He screams that he is the best at piloting the Gundam, that they will need him. He calls for Bright, for Mirai, for Sayla, for anyone to listen to his explanations. And down the hall, Frau listens to him calling every name except hers.
The crew of the White Base is on standby, awaiting further orders and Odessa Day. While Bright, Mirai, and Sayla try to relax on the bridge, Amuro is in his cell, refusing to eat. When Ryu asks Amuro what he plans to do, Amuro says that if they won't let him pilot the Gundam, he might just leave. Furious, Ryu punches Amuro as hard as he can and tells him to stop sulking, but Amuro remains defiant. On the bridge, Hayato asks Bright what he plans to do about Amuro. While Ryu and Bright think Amuro will come around soon, the rest of the crew are skeptical. Ramba Ral prepares for another assault on the White Base. He receives word from Dozel that 3 Dom mobile suits are being sent to help his mission, but McVeigh intercepts the message and decides this is the perfect moment to remove Ramba Ral, who knows too much. McVeigh prevents the Dom mobile suits from reaching them, and Ramba Ral decides they should change the plan to his old specialty, guerrilla tactics. Ryu is woken abruptly by a call from Sayla. Hayato Kai and several other crew members have taken a dune buggy and left. As he goes to retrieve them, Mirai wonders if she and Bright have been paying too much attention to Amuro. Ryu catches up to this new group of deserters, but they tell him their plan is to find some other Federation force to join. Kai questions why they're needed on the white base when Bright has Amuro. As they argue, the Gallop flies by. Ryu rushes to get back to the white base, yelling over his shoulder that they will just have to consult their consciences. Ultimately, they decide to return. As Rambaral's force approaches, Amuro finally eats and puts his uniform back on. Suddenly, the white base can see incoming Gallop and Kui, and it's everyone to battle stations. Bright sends Sayla to the Gundam, and Frabo retrieves Amuro and sends him to the portside guns. From there, Amuro is able to provide covering fire for Sayla, and she destroys an enemy Zaku, her first kill with the Gundam. Rao's crew use jetpacks to leave the Kui and fly up to board the white base, and the white base crew scramble to hold them off. Bloody battle rages, gunfire streaking back and forth and grenades filling the halls with smoke. The Gundam is powerless to help in this kind of fight, and Sayla returns to base, switching places with Amuro, who Bright has ordered to clear part of the bridge, even if he must damage the white base to do it. Rounding a corner, Rambaral runs straight into Sayla, who he immediately recognizes as Lady Artesia. He tells her that he served under her father, Lord Zeon Daikun, and she suddenly remembers a younger Rambaral playing with her when she was small. As they stand there, stunned, Ryu rounds a corner. He and Rambaral both fire, wounding each other. Rambaral runs to the next room but finds himself cornered. He orders his men to retreat and uses the radio to call Hammond, asking her to destroy the white base with the Gallop and telling her that he found Artesia. It is unclear how much of his message made it through. Seeing that he is surrounded, Rambaral congratulates the white base crew. "You've all fought splendidly, but now you'll see the fate of a soldier." He pulls the pin from a grenade and jumps out into the open air, dying in the grenade explosion. Hammond tries to bring the Gallop into attack, but Amuro throws the beam javelin directly through it, and Hammond just barely manages to eject before the Gallop explodes. The battle at an end, a wounded Ryu is loaded into a stretcher and carefully carried inside. As the next episode opens, Hammond is preparing to avenge Rambaral, no matter the cost. McVeigh is not cooperating and has provided just one old Zaku and 4 Magella tops. She gathers the remnants of Rambaral's crew, explaining that she must try to complete his last mission, but that it is unlikely anyone who goes will return. Despite the odds stacked against them, they all agree to join her. The white base is doing what repairs they can, but they are short of people, parts, and weapons. There are still tensions and bad feeling in the crew over Bright's handling of Amuro. Ryu rests in the medbay, but when Haro and Frabo visit, Haro can tell that Ryu is in a bad way. Amuro has been returned to the brig, and Ryu wonders whether it is Amuro or Bright being stubborn now. Ryu staggers through the white base, talking to Bright and Amuro, and trying to get them to understand each other and make some kind of peace. When Hammond's force arrives and begins the attack, it is Ryu who convinces Sayla, and Sayla who convinces Bright to let Amuro out in the Gundam. As the battle rages, the white base begins to pull away, and we see the graves of those who died in the last battle. Kika is saddened that they must leave the fallen crew, who she has come to see as brothers. The Zeon cargo ship, filled with explosives, tries to ram into the side of the white base. Amuro wrestles it back, but soon comes under attack by the Zaku and the Magella tops. He manages to throw the Zaku at one of the Magella, but Hammond in another comes up from behind him and begins firing on the Gundam at point-blank range. Ryu, in a core fighter, comes to the rescue, but the core fighter has no ammunition, and he does the only thing he can think of to save them. He crashes the core fighter directly into Hammond's Magella top. The crash site burns like a funeral pyre, and the shocked and distraught white base crew stand in the desert, weeping and blaming themselves for the death of their friend. Sayla dries her tears and reminds them that the only way to make themselves and their loved ones safe is to destroy Zeon. While the white base waits for word of Odessa Day, they scour the area, destroying every Zeon mine they find. But the constant stress, fear, and grief have taken their toll on Bright, and he collapses from exhaustion. While he lies feverish and unconscious in the medbay, Mirai steps up, but quickly finds herself paralyzed by the pressure of being responsible for the white base and all its crew. McVeigh, furious that the white base has been successful in spite of heightened security, plans a trap. A group of commandos, with little more than jetpacks and plastic explosives, will plant bombs all over the white base, targeting its Minovsky particle emitter and ECM transmitter, but leaving its radar functional. After the bombs go off, the crew struggle to defend the crippled white base. Many of them wish Ryu were still with them, even Bright, talking in his sleep. Amuro and Hayato, first in the core fighters and then in the Gundam and gun tank, are soon overwhelmed by the Zeon force of Dops and Goofs. and Mirai orders the operators to use the ship's radar to find them all a clear path to retreat. This path leads them directly into the range of Zeon's mega particle cannon, which emerges from below the sand and blasts a hole straight through the body of the white base. Amuro is able to destroy the mega particle cannon with a direct hit from his beam rifle, but the white base still makes an emergency landing. DOPS are closing in, and Mirai is paralyzed with terror, convinced this is it for them. But one of the operators recommends setting off smoke bombs in the launch tubes to make the white base seem even more damaged than it is. The deception is successful, and the DOPS leave. Mirai recovers herself enough to take Sayla up on her suggestion that they call General Rebel for help, before leaving the bridge to check on Bright. In the next episode, the white base crew attempt repairs, but don't have any of the parts or supplies that they need. Bright asks Mirai to officially take on the post of acting commander. Mirai is afraid and tries to say no, that she isn't ready to take on such a responsibility, but Bright reminds her that no one is ever really ready. She reluctantly agrees, and Bright goes back to recuperating. On the Federation ship Big Tray, General Revel decides to send Lieutenant Matilda with regular supplies for the white base and new experimental weapons for the Gundam. She and her crew will assist the white base with repairs, then go directly with the white base crew to participate in the Odessa Day operation. But Zeon spies have infiltrated Big Tray's crew, and McVeigh's forces intercept Matilda's Medea supply squadron. The white base receives Matilda's SOS, and Mirai orders Amuro, Kai, and Hayato to go defend the supplies. Suddenly unsure of herself and concerned that she might be leaving the white base undefended, Mirai moves to order them back, but Sayla refuses to change the order and tells them to launch. Amuro fights off the DOPS in a core fighter, but is struggling to fight the Goofs. He performs a mid-air transfer, combining the core fighter with the Gundam parts to form the Gundam, and Kai arrives in the gun cannon to back him up. The Medea squadron all land, some too damaged to fly, the others trying to provide defense. Lieutenant Matilda orders the upgrade Gundam parts unloaded. Even though Amuro has never trained with them, they may help him fight off the last of the Goofs. Back at the white base, Mirai wonders what to do, and remains nervous and uncertain. One of the operators tells her that the most important thing in command is to seem calm and confident. When Bright calls for a status report, she tells him the Medea squadron with supplies will be with them shortly. She is able to put him at ease, and while they wait, she sets the rest of the crew to continuing whatever repairs are possible. The Gundam is badly damaged, and its movement severely impaired when it is caught with a Goof heat rod. Help arrives for the struggling Gundam in the form of Hayato, piloting the new G-Fighter, a fighter that the Gundam can stand on for aerial combat in Earth gravity. They defeat the last of the Zeon force, and escort the Medea squadron to the white base. There, Mirai feels ashamed that she struggled so much with command, but Sayla comforts her, saying that she ultimately rose to the occasion. Lieutenant Matilda thanks Amuro, Hayato, and Kai for rescuing her, and takes them to look over the rest of the new Gundam parts. On the Zeon-occupied moon, Caecilia berates her generals, ordering them to reallocate resources for the coming combat, mentioning both that Char is now on Earth with the Mad Angler Squadron, and that some of her prized troops, the Black Tri-Stars, are being sent to reinforce McVeigh. The arrival on Earth of the Black Tri-Stars prompts General Revel to move up the Odessa Day operation. We learn that the double agent Judok is working in concert with Elran, when Elran finds Judok and tells him to warn McVeigh that the Federation attack is imminent. Amuro's crush on Matilda is obvious, but he's not alone. Many among the crew are smitten with the confident and elegant lieutenant. When an embarrassed Kai asks to take a picture with her, everyone nearby crowds in, Amuro included. Thrilled to have a copy of the photo, Amuro tapes it to the inside of the Gundam cockpit. Once arriving on Earth, the Black Tri-Stars go in search of the White Base, setting off the base's perimeter sensors. It's everyone to battle stations, and with Sayla's experience of piloting the Gundam, she is requested to go to the hangar and pilot the new G-armor. Left short-handed on the bridge, Mirai calls Frabo in to replace Sayla on the comms station. Sayla and Amuro are quickly briefed on the G-armor, and Matilda startles Amuro by blowing him a kiss just before they launch. Outside, the gun cannon and gun tank are struggling to hit the fast and agile DOMs, and the Black Tri-Stars are getting closer and closer to the White Base. The White Base tries to move away from the battle, but there is a problem with the engines. Sayla and Amuro separate into the Gundam and the G-Fighter, as two of the DOMs reach the White Base itself. The situation is looking dire when Matilda decides to sortie in her Medea transport, hoping to buy the engine repair team and the rest of the crew some time and fend off the Dom attacks. The Gundam is almost caught when the Black Tri-Stars fall into formation and execute their jet stream attack, but Amuro manages to dodge. When they try it again, he is ready, leaping out of the first Dom's way and destroying one of the others. Matilda's Medea is backing him up, guns blazing. As the third Dom jumps to attack the Gundam, the Medea collides with it, pushing it away, and Matilda orders the pilot to drive the Dom into the ground. Before they can do so, the Dom grabs hold of the front of the Medea, destroying the cockpit and killing everyone aboard before escaping. The remaining Black Tri-Stars retreat, and after receiving word of the White Base's successful combat, General Revel announces that the Odessa operation will commence on the following day, at 0600 hours. A grieving White Base crew line its decks in a salute in honor of Lieutenant Matilda and her crew, as they fly away from the scene of the battle. In the next episode, everyone on both sides prepares for Odessa Day. The two remaining Black Tri-Stars hold a memorial for their fallen comrade and vow vengeance. Sayla and Amuro launch in the G-Armor to provide reconnaissance, and Bright is back on the White Base bridge, with Frabo reporting to Sayla's old station. As Sayla practices in the G-Armor, she and Amuro spot the Zeon front line. They descend to keep from being spotted and notice a Federation plane leaving Zeon territory. Following from a safe distance, they see the plane land on Big Tray. Before landing themselves, they warn Bright and Mirai that they may have caught a spy. On Big Tray, Amuro confronts Elran, while some soldiers hold Judok in custody and listen in. Elran incriminates himself and almost shoots Amuro before the soldiers come in and arrest him. Amuro is overcome with fury, thinking of Lieutenant Matilda and others who have died because of Elran's treachery, but the soldiers send him to the battle, reminding him that a court-martial will deal with Elran. The Odessa operation has already begun. The White Base is under orders to attack the rear of McVeigh's forces, and Bright and Hayato are soon joined by Sayla and Amuro in their fight against the Black Tri-Stars. McVeigh was counting on Elran to betray the Federation and prevent a portion of the forces from joining the battle. Instead, his own forces are beaten back, and in desperation, he threatens to detonate a hydrogen bomb if the Federation does not withdraw. General Revel orders his forces to continue the attack, and McVeigh orders the missile launched. Amuro defeats the Black Tri-Stars just in time to ride the G-Fighter up to the missile, slicing off its nose cone and effectively disarming it. The Federation has won, and McVeigh flees. The crew of the White Base are formally received by General Revel and his staff, now officially part of the Federation Armed Forces. In a cottage near the sea, a young woman is washing dishes when suddenly the house starts to rattle. Rushing outside, she sees the White Base flying low overhead towards the docks nearby. As she rushes for a camera and begins typing a coded message, it becomes clear that she is a Zeon spy. She attaches a small canister to the bottom of a balloon and releases it to float out over the sea. The radio signal coded in her message is picked up by a Zeon submarine and relayed to the Mad Angler Squadron. They are just off the coast, and Char is with them. The image is blurry, but Char suspects that the White Base has arrived. The commander of the submarine suggests that Zeon ships stationed nearby send their new GOG mobile suits to attack the docks and the Federation ships there. Char insists on taking the Sea Lance, a sort of speedboat, to observe the battle himself. On the White Base, Kai looks forward to some R&R while they wait for repairs to complete, but Amuro reminds him that they are officially part of the army now, and things will not be as relaxed as they were. Upon arrival, they are briefed by General Revel. Zeon has been working on many new mobile suits, and what information the Federation has flashes on a screen behind him. As soon as the White Base and its mobile suits have been repaired, they will be sent to Jaburo in South America, where Federation HQ is currently located. Frabo works up the courage to ask, what of those who don't want to join the army? The general tells her that due to their exposure to top-secret information, anyone who wanted to leave would be imprisoned for at least 1 year. Amuro later asks Fra if she means to leave the army, but she explains that she's worried about the orphans. It seems dangerous to keep them on the ship, but who would look after them if they were left behind? The Gogs move swiftly through the water, but are caught in a field of underwater mines. A special freeze gel coats the outside of the suit, which prevents any more mines from detonating when they make contact. However, sensors in the area alert the base that it is under attack. Bombardment begins as both the mobile suits and the nearby submarines fire missiles on the base and the surrounding town. Initially, only the Gundam is ready to sortie, with a new, more powerful G-Hammer, but even this new weaponry cannot defeat the armor and strength of the GOG. Amuro is joined by the gun tank and by Kai in a smaller vehicle with a missile battery. The Gundam converts to the G-Armor and later to the G-Bull, an extra-large tank configuration. From the command post nearby, Revel observes the battle, thinking to himself that every action now seems to require mobile suits. One Gog is destroyed in the land fighting, and the other leaps into the sea. Amuro converts the G-Bull back to the Gundam and follows. Underwater, the Gog can easily outmaneuver the Gundam, and it is only after disabling the Gog's camera that Amuro is able to end the battle. The underwater explosion causes a massive spout of water, and the White Base cannot tell who has won. Despite efforts to radio Amuro, they hear no response. A wake appears. Something underwater is speeding towards them. Finally, Amuro reestablishes radio connection, and the White Base bridge crew can heave a collective sigh of relief. The Zeon submarine commander laments the loss of the mobile suits, but Char seems unconcerned and insists that he will take out the Gundam himself. Amuro briefs General Revel and his officers on the White Base crew's experience of the G-parts, what has worked and what still needs improvement. He has his photo of Lieutenant Matilda clipped to his notes. Kai excuses himself, and outside, he punches the wall, snarling, "Looks like they'll be living on this ship for the rest of their lives." He stalks away, changes into civilian clothes, packs a bag, and starts to leave. Amuro tries to convince him to stay, saying that even though they don't always like each other, they've become close, fighting side by side all this time. But Bright tells Amuro to let Kai go. Kai warns Bright that they won't be able to win by pushing themselves too hard. When Bright counters that the Zeons are also pushing themselves, Kai shrugs. He says, "I've passed my own limit," and walks away. In town, Kai runs into the young local woman from the previous episode. She introduces herself as Miharu. Since he looks as if he's been kicked off the ship, she offers to let him stay with her for a few days. She lives just outside of town in a rundown cottage with her two younger siblings. Kai has dinner with them, talking a bit about the White Base, but when Miharu and her siblings leave the room, he finds her gun and realizes she must be a spy. When she comes back, he tells her that the White Base will be leaving that night, although they've been having problems with the right engine. Once he's asleep, she relays this information. Back on the sub, Char tells Boone to have his spy sneak aboard the White Base. It must not leave harbor before they know where it's headed. To cover the infiltration, they launch a Gog and a new suit, the Zagok. As Zeon ships bombard the harbor and the White Base crew prepares to fight, Boone sends one of his own men, in civilian disguise, to meet Miharu. Kai wakes to the sounds of explosions. The children tell him Miharu has gone to run errands, but he clearly doesn't believe them. In fact, she is meeting the Zeon agent, who gives her a disguise, a large sum of money, and new orders. Sneak aboard the White Base. By the time she returns home, Kai has gone. She leaves the money with her siblings, telling them to be careful with it because she needs to go to work and might be away for a while. She hugs them close and says a tearful goodbye, unsure when she will see them again. Kai watches the battle from outside town, telling himself that it has nothing to do with him, and remembering his time on the ship. "Maybe I am a coward," he says to himself, but he rushes to join the battle, arriving just in time to save Hayato and help Amuro destroy the Zagok. Zeon withdraws, but their mission is accomplished. Miharu is aboard the White Base. In the next episode, the White Base is crossing the Atlantic Ocean on its way to Federation HQ in Jaburo, South America. Miharu searches the ship for intelligence about their destination, but she is interrupted by Kai. When he spots her, she pretends that she snuck aboard to be with him, but he laughs at the idea. Still, he hides her in his room, saying that she can get off the ship when they arrive in South America. Amuro sees them together, and Kai lies, saying that Miharu is his girlfriend and that she'll be off the ship soon, asking Amuro not to tell anyone. Alone, Miharu wonders how Zeon intends to contact her all the way out here. A civilian plane in distress hails the White Base, but it is really Boone and another Zeon agent in a stolen craft. While the White Base repairs the airplane, Boone asks permission to use the bathroom. As soon as he is out of sight, he uses a short-range communicator to contact Miharu and retrieve her intel. Kai, thinking about Miharu's predicament, realizes the civilians on board must be Zeon spies. He tries to warn the rest of the crew, but it is too late to stop Boone leaving. And, unwilling to give Miharu's secret away, he is unable to convince the crew to shoot down what they still think is a civilian airplane. Boone relays the intelligence to Char and then, with Char's permission, takes the new mobile armor, Grabro, and two Zagoks to get revenge on the White Base for the deaths of his men. Despite the White Base's lead, the Grabro soon catches up to them and it's all hands to battle stations. Miharu sees Kika, Katz, and Let's run by and is shocked to learn there are children on board. When the ship shudders under the Grabro's missile barrage, Kai brings Miharu a life vest and tells her to stay safe, but she's overcome by guilt and begs to be allowed to help defend the White Base. Kai tries to tell her that this attack isn't her fault, but she follows him through the ship, begging to be allowed to help. Outside, the battle rages. The Gundam duels the Grabro beneath the waves, but its beam weapons are not suited to underwater combat. Sayla manages to destroy one of the Zagoks, but is hit by a missile and crashes. With the catapults damaged, only the gun parry can launch. On the way to it, Miharu sees the orphans knocked down by another missile blast as they try to put out fires. She can't stand by and watch while her own siblings are safe. Finally, Kai agrees that she can help him by firing the missiles while he pilots. In the air, the gun parry struggles to hit its submerged foes, launching missiles and dodging counterattacks until it is damaged by the remaining Zagok. The firing controls jam, and Miharu leaves the cockpit to fire the last missile manually. Together, she and Kai destroy the final Zagok, but the blast kills Miharu, flinging her out into the open air, and her body falls to the sea. Somewhere below, Amuro manages to best the Grabro, though it costs the Gundam a leg. On the white base, Kai sobs on the deck, surrounded by his shipmates. No one can comfort him, no one else knew Miharu, and none but Amuro had even seen her. As the rest of the crew wonder who she was, he remembers how she talked about the better future her siblings will have when the war is over. The white base flies over the Amazon, near Federation headquarters in Jaburo, unaware that Zeon submarines are shadowing them. The crew gathers on the bridge, entranced by a mass migration of butterflies. Only Kai sits alone, still grieving Miharu. They see no sign of their destination until Bright contacts the base, and suddenly, a section of dense jungle slides open, revealing the entrance to a massive underground facility. Inside, safely landed and with the door closed behind them once more, Mirai breathes a sigh of relief, and it seems the crew can relax at last. But Char and the Zeon forces tracking the white base now know the location of Jaburo's main entrance. Inside Jaburo, it's repairs for the white base and physical exams for the crew now that they are real soldiers. Amuro's runs long, for some reason. Afterward, he goes to speak with the officer overseeing the repairs, a Lieutenant Woody, and learns that Woody had been engaged to marry Lieutenant Matilda after the Odessa operation. They had hoped the white base crew could attend the wedding. The news hits Amuro hard. He flashes back to the day Matilda died, and tries to stammer out an apology. If not for his inexperience, then maybe. But Woody won't hear it. He snaps that Amuro is being conceited, that the Gundam cannot win the war alone and could not have saved Matilda. All Amuro can do, all any of them can do, is their best. He loves the white base because Matilda cared so much about it, and he's going to do his best to get it ready for what's to come. Alarms begin to sound. Zeon is here. A dozen Gao, supported by Dops, drop bombs and mobile suits into the area. Flares shoot up from the jungle, giving the aerial forces a target. Missiles launch and the barrage begins. Federation jets and anti-aircraft guns begin to fight back against the Zeon forces. The placid jungle of a few hours ago is gone. The white base pilots defend the main entrance to Jaburo, and there see the first GIM mobile suits, mass-produced Gundams, joining the fight. Outside, Char himself launches in a red Zagok, with two wingmen, but one is almost immediately shot down by anti-aircraft fire. The second is destroyed by underwater batteries protecting the river entrance to Jaburo. Undeterred, Char joins an advance team and leads an attack on two of Jaburo's entrances. The white base crew holds the main entrance, but the second attack catches the Federation off guard, and the engineers working on the white base are forced to join the defenses. Woody remembers how Matilda died to protect the white base. He won't let anything happen to it now. Amuro and Sayla rush to the second entrance and find the red Zagok massacring the defenders, tanks and mobile suits alike. Realizing with dread that it must be Char, Amuro tries to convince Woody to turn back, that his hovercraft is useless in this kind of fight, but the grieving lieutenant won't hear it. He attacks, and Char smashes the cockpit like he's swatting a fly. Lieutenant Woody dies the same way Lieutenant Matilda did. As the hovercraft burns, Amuro and the other pilots defeat the rest of the advance team, forcing Char to retreat. Little time passes before the next episode. The Zeon forces have bombarded Jaburo ceaselessly since Char's failed infiltration, but to little effect. Unconcerned, the Federation forces in Jaburo return to business. The white base crew is given official ranks, and Bright receives a promotion to lieutenant. Amuro takes no pleasure in his stripes, and when it's announced that all their shipmates who didn't make it will receive posthumous 2-rank promotions, he snaps. Is that all they get? You could at least say thank you. Bright tries to intervene, but the damage is done, and the Federation officer awarding them their ranks goes to slap the impertinent boy. Amuro leans just out of the way, but this gets him in even more trouble and earns him another slap. While the older orphans are made officers, Kika, Katz, and Let's are to be left in Jaburo's childcare facilities. Fra worries that the children won't be happy, separated from their ersatz family on the ship, but Amuro is sure of one thing: young children shouldn't have to see people killing each other. In the childcare center, the orphans have fun, running and laughing, playing in the playground, and being served juice and soft serve by a childcare robot. But they argue with the other children there, and when the one adult working at the center runs out to see what's happened, they flee into the vast dark caverns of Jaburo. She tries to follow them, but they slide down a rocky slope and are quickly out of sight. Soon Fra, Mirai, and Sayla join the hunt for the orphans, but they are already long gone, afraid that if they are found, they will be forced to stay in Jaburo. By chance, the orphans stop to rest in the building housing the new gyms, but Kika sees movement and suddenly they are caught by a force of Zeon saboteurs. Led by Char himself, these commandos tie and gag the children before placing time bombs all over the mobile suits. Working together, the orphans free each other from the ropes and gags and scramble to remove bombs from the gyms, just as they once saw Amuro remove bombs from the Gundam. They place the explosives in the back of a small car and attempt to drive them all to a remote place, away from any people or facilities. By chance, Amuro, Kai, and Hayato meet them en route. Amuro takes over their car while Kai helps the kids to safety. A minute later, Amuro throws himself free as the car and the bombs fly off a cliff and explode in the deep crevice below. As their plan falls apart, the Zeon forces try to flee Jaburo. Char, rushing to get to his Zagok, and Sayla, still searching for the orphans, come face to face. Neither can believe it. Sayla cannot believe that her gentle brother Kazval would join Zeon. Char cannot believe that his gentle sister Artesia would join any army at all. He asks her to leave the military for him, but before she can answer, someone opens fire and Char runs to join the rest of his force. Mirai runs up, asking if Sayla is okay, and doesn't believe her when Sayla claims not to have seen the Zeon officer standing on the rocks right in front of her. Char orders his men to fall back. Their mission is a failure, but the Gundam is coming for them and they cannot run fast enough. Amuro destroys all 4 of the Akagais accompanying Char, and even slices an arm off Char's Zagok before Char is able to escape through an underground river. The childcare officer tries to convince the White Base crew that Kika, Katz, and Let's should remain in Jaburo where it's safe, but Kai reminds her Jaburo has been infiltrated and attacked twice since they arrived. Besides, these aren't average children. They've been fighting alongside the rest of the crew all this time. The officer is forced to admit that maybe the children are better off with their adoptive family. While the rest of the crew celebrates, Sayla frets over Char's request, and Bright receives the unwelcome order that the White Base will be a decoy, luring Zeon forces away from the main Federation Space Force. In their final meeting with the Jaburo generals, Bright and Mirai receive instructions for their decoy mission. The White Base will leave 2 hours ahead of the main force, taking the opposite route to eventually rendezvous at Zeon's space fortress, Solomon. The generals are confident that Solomon will fall, and that Zeon will then be forced to sue for peace. During this meeting, one of the generals, who knew Mirai's father, jokes that she must let him find her a husband once the war is done. She seems uncomfortable, and he apologizes, as he remembers she already has a fiancé. This is news to Bright, and Mirai tries to explain that it was an engagement arranged by their families, but they are both out of sorts as they arrive back at the White Base to prepare for departure. A new lieutenant, Slegger Law, has been assigned to the White Base. He is older than anyone else on the crew, and Bright only outranks him because he is the commander of the vessel. As the White Base leaves Jaburo and Earth behind, they fly past a beautiful flock of flamingos, a brief moment of joy and peace before their battles begin again. Char and Lieutenant Takwan set out to follow them in a Zanzibar, taken from Kaiselia's Earth forces. They did not have permission, but would have lost the White Base if they had waited. This Zanzibar also carries the Big Ro, a state-of-the-art mobile armor, and 2 Rick Doms that have been modified for combat in space. The White Base prepares for the incoming Zeon force. Sayla, thinking out loud, says that Char must be coming for them. When Bright asks how she knows, she says that fate connects Char and the White Base. The 2 massive ships come into firing range. The Zanzibar launches the Big Ro and Rick Doms, while the White Base launches the G-Sky and G-Bull. Sayla is preoccupied, thinking that she cannot let Char waste his life getting vengeance on the Zabi family. Shockingly fast, the Big Ro zips past Amuro and Sayla, and on the second pass, its claws grab the G-Bull and throw it towards Earth. As the Zanzibar and the White Base exchange laser fire, Amuro and Sayla continue to fight the Big Ro and the Rick Doms, near enough to Earth that they risk getting pulled into freefall. Kai goes out to back them up in the gun cannon, giving Amuro time to transfer to the Gundam. Char orders the Zanzibar to take a collision course with the White Base, and as the ships pass each other, they exchange broadsides, with Lieutenant Slegger managing a direct hit on the Zanzibar's engines. Sayla worries that the pilot of the Big Ro might be Char, and hesitates to fire multiple times because of it, but manages to destroy one of the Doms. Amuro in the Gundam grabs hold of the Big Ro, but its acceleration causes him to pass out. The Big Ro's claws grab hold of the Gundam, holding it in place in front of its mega particle cannon, but Amuro wakes just in time to dodge out of the way and fire the Gundam's beam rifle right through the Big Ro. The remaining Dom retreats, and Char orders his crew to begin repairs. Amuro, Sayla, and Kai return to the White Base, and the crew there take a brief rest, though they know they haven't seen the last of the Zanzibar. Just a short while later, it seems another mobile suit is approaching the white base. Since it sustained the least damage in the last fight, Hayato is sent out in the gun tank. Amuro worries about sending Hayato alone and decides to go along in the Gundam. Hayato reaches the enemy, a new mobile armor called Zakrello, and piloted by Dimitri, one of Taquan's men who wants revenge on the white base. Char is angry that the mobile armor was launched against his orders, and warns Mulligan that if this happens again, he'll be court-martialed. Against the speed and agility of the Zakrello, Hayato is outmatched, but Amuro arrives and defeats it, though not without the Gundam taking serious damage. Repairs continue on the White Base and the Zanzibar, and Char calls Dren of the nearby Camel Squadron to intercept the Federation ship and keep them pinned down until Char's Zanzibar can catch up. When the White Base becomes aware of Camel Squadron and its Musai, Bright decides that the best course is to punch through the line. The squadron approaches at full speed, supported by Rickdoms. Dren, who had been on Char's Musai during and immediately after the attack on Side 7, feels that he too has a fateful attraction to the White Base. For the first time, Lieutenant Slayer takes a G-Sky and joins Kai and Hayato in the battle. Sayla, who slept only fitfully and dreamed of Char, is also sent out, even though Amuro is worried about her and thinks she has been acting strangely. Slegger, eager to prove himself as a pilot, wastes ammo by firing too soon. 2 hours have passed since the White Base left Earth, and the main Federation force is leaving Earth's atmosphere now, taking a direct route to Luna 2. While the White Base focuses fire on the engines of one Musai, their mobile suits and jets try to take out the Rickdoms. The White Base destroys one Musai, while Amuro, in the finally repaired Gundam, takes out another. He slices through the bridge of Dren's ship, causing Dren and several of his officers to be sucked into the vacuum of space. After a duel with one remaining Dom, a well-aimed toss of the beam javelin destroys the last Musai. The White Base, limping along and unable to withstand any more combat, decides to head for the neutral territory of Side 6. While there is a chance they will be surrounded, they need somewhere safe to conduct repairs, and Side 6 is the nearest and best option. Mirai sets the course, thinking about the irony that they are now headed straight for the last known location of her fiancé. Zeon's Space Fortress Solomon, commanded by Dozle Zabi, lurks in the ruins of Side 1. Offended by Kaecilia's use of his former subordinate, Char, Dozle dispatches the powerful Conscon attack force to prove Char's incompetence by destroying the White Base. The White Base nears neutral Side 6, as Amuro and Sayla patrol nearby. Alone together, Sayla asks Amuro about his feelings for Fra. He stutters that he doesn't hate Fra, but just as the conversation is becoming uncomfortable for him, Amuro spots Zeon forces. They skirmish with the new Zeon mobile armor, Brabro, but it disengages and they return to base. Once inside Side 6, all their weapons are sealed with red tape. District Attorney Cameron Bloom comes aboard to examine the ship and warns Bright that any broken tape will result in severe fines. There will also be no repairs for the White Base in Side 6. That would be considered aiding the war effort. As they enter the dock, Cameron and Mirai suddenly recognize each other. Cameron is Mirai's fiancé. They are thrilled to see each other alive and well in spite of the war, but Bright reminds Mirai that she has a job to do and asks them to restrain themselves. Although upset by seeing them together, Cameron's hand resting on Mirai's arm, Bright says nothing more. Later, catching up, Cameron wonders why Mirai never tried to contact him. Even though he was so desperate, he spent a small fortune hiring people to look for her. Mirai seems dismayed. Why didn't he look himself? She asks if their engagement was only to please their parents, and though Cameron objects, Mirai believes that it was. With his hands on her waist, he asks her to come home with him, insisting that she'll be treated like a queen. She pulls away, asking him to wait, to slow down. Before Cameron can say anything else, Slegger interjects himself and punches Cameron in the face. The punch doesn't pack much force, but it gets the point across. Cameron acknowledges that he was out of line, and Slegger points out that the crew are all fond of Mirai. She is like a mother to the White Base. While out shopping for supplies with some of the crew, Amuro spots his father, alive, at a bookstore across the street. Trying to catch up, heedless of the traffic and unable to get his father's attention, he is soon running along behind a bus with his father on board. Every time he gets close, the bus pulls away again. When he finally catches up, his father seems unsurprised to see him, and asks how the Gundam is doing. He invites Amuro back to his apartment, a shabby room overlooking a junkyard, and displays his latest invention. Tem is very proud of it, insisting that Amuro needs to install it in the Gundam right away, but Amuro thinks to himself that the gadget is junk, and that his father is suffering from brain damage caused by oxygen deprivation. Amuro tries to talk to Tem about seeing his mother on Earth, but Tem has already returned to work. Oblivious to Amuro's feelings, he suggests they go visit Earth when the war is over. When Amuro tries to talk more, Tem barks, "Get going! You're a military man now!" Amuro runs out, barely holding back tears. On the White Base, they are preparing to leave Side 6 for a dock just outside the territory, where the White Base can receive the repairs it so desperately needs. Bergamino, the war profiteer who owns the dock, insists that they will be safe due to his close ties with the top brass of both Zeon and the Federation. The Conscon fleet and 12 of its Rickdoms spring their trap, firing on the White Base from behind the floating dock. Though the White Base is forced to retreat, their pilots destroy all 12 Rickdoms. Amuro alone, counting each one as he goes, kills 9, all while Conscon trembles, just now beginning to understand the kind of monster that he faces. Char's Zanzibar approaches to support Conscon, but as the White Base retreats toward Side 6 and a local patrol ship passes nearby, Zeon is forced to halt their attack out of fear they might cause an international incident. Cameron tells Mirai that his father fixed everything so that she can stay safe with him. She asks, if she is supposed to give up the White Base, what is he willing to do for her? When he says that he'll ask his father to help her, tears fill her eyes. "You still don't understand," she says, and tells him she cannot abandon the White Base. On his knees beside her, Cameron proclaims that he loves her, and always will. Mirai thanks him, saying that it means a lot to her, before floating away in the low gravity of the port. Cameron begs to know what she doesn't like about him, and says that he'll change, but Mirai does not respond. Back on Side 6, the White Base does what maintenance it can and waits for orders from the TNM fleet, but Side 6 wants them gone, and Zeon forces still wait just outside Side 6's boundaries. Char takes his Zanzibar and heads to Side 6, leaving Conscon behind. He tells his subordinate they need to retrieve a secret weapon. They arrive on Side 6 without incident, greeted in much the same way the White Base was, but the White Base crew look across the port in horror. Overcome with anger and grief, Hayato moves to leave the ship before being stopped by his crewmates. The people responsible for Ryu's death are right there! He wants vengeance, regardless of the cost. Bright decides that no one is to leave the ship, and that once maintenance is done and Amuro has returned from his errand, they will leave. Amuro, out in one of the buggies, gets caught in a rainstorm and takes shelter in the porch of a nearby house. While there, he runs into a mysterious woman, who senses that a swan flying overhead is dying just before it crashes into the nearby pond. Amuro seems to hear her thoughts before she speaks. When the rain stops, she runs out into the sunshine, and Amuro continues on his way. He goes back to see his father, Tem Ray. All Tem can talk about is the Gundam. Did Amuro install the new part? Did it improve the Gundam? With a creepy laugh, Tem talks about how he will focus all his time and efforts on Gundam upgrades. In a flash, Amuro remembers the other times, long before the oxygen deprivation, that his father cared more about machines, about his own creations, than about human beings. Preoccupied and rushing back to the White Base, Amuro gets his buggy stuck in a rut. He waves down another car driving by and gets hit by a splash of mud. The car pulls over. It's the mysterious woman from earlier, accompanied by a Zeon officer. The officer offers to help Amuro, and Amuro can't shake the feeling he knows this officer somehow. He learns that the woman's name is Lala, and the officer is none other than Char. As soon as the buggy is free, Amuro rushes back to the White Base, and Char and Lala continue on their way. Cameron comes to the White Base to offer himself and his private ship as an escort. If the White Base is accompanied by a Side 6 vessel, it may prevent Zeon from firing on them. Mirai is suspicious of his motives. He isn't going to win her over with grand gestures now. As they argue, the crew around them pretend not to be listening. Suddenly, Slegger slaps Mirai. Everyone looks up in shock. He yells first at Mirai. Can't she tell that Cameron is serious about wanting to help? Then at Cameron. How can he let Mirai speak to him that way? Bright breaks the tension slightly when he accepts Cameron's offer of help. Conscon launches his remaining Rickdoms, ordering them to attack, and to hell with worrying about Side 6. Cameron's ship moves away, but stays near enough to watch the battle, and is soon joined by a TV crew, broadcasting footage of the battle on TVs on the side. Tem watches, as do Lala and Char. Tem watches the Gundam hungrily, cheering when it does well and crediting his own engineering skill with the Gundam's success. Char admonishes Lala to watch the combat carefully. In battle, Amuro's perception and reaction times seem sharper than ever before. He destroys one Rickdom after another, dodging and weaving, and suddenly able to predict the enemy moves before they happen. With the Rickdoms destroyed, he looks at Conscon's flagship and identifies 2 weak points. Stabbing deep into the ship with his beam sabers, carefully targeting the weak points, he is able to destroy the ship single-handedly. The battle over, Cameron heads back to Side 6, waving goodbye to Mirai and hoping that she survives the war, and the White Base continues on its way. The White Base crew joins the Federation formation, and Bright goes to see the fleet commander, none other than Commandant Joaquin. He shows Bright the battle plans. Their target is a space fortress, Solomon, and the White Base, as part of the fleet, will be in the vanguard. Bright worries that they aren't up to it, that they are overworked, but Joaquin is sure they'll be fine. After all, Amuro is amazing and different from the rest of them. On Solomon, the Papua has arrived, but it is not carrying the mobile suits that Dozle hoped for. Instead, it has only one new prototype mobile suit, the Big Zam. Zeon soldiers are searching for the TNM fleet, but they have not been able to find it among the many decoys and fields of space debris. The Federation moves in to attack in a frontal assault on Solomon. They must hold out for 15 minutes to give the TNM fleet time to use its anti-fortress weapon. Solomon fires its guns on the oncoming fleet, and soon space is full of missile fire and beam weapons shooting back and forth. Some of the new public-class assault boats fire missiles that create a beam interference field, forcing Solomon's defenders to only fire missiles and to muster their mobile suits. Assuming that the frontal assault is a feint, they leave one fleet in reserve to defend against the TNM fleet they assume is coming from another direction. From behind the beam interference field, the Federation fleet launched their own mobile suits and fighters. The Gundam, gun cannon, gun tank, and G-fighters join a massive Jim and Ball mobile suits. In the midst of the battle, Dozle leaves the bridge to go to his quarters, opulent rooms where his wife Zena and infant daughter Mineva wait with their attendants. Insisting that it is only a precaution, he has them all move to escape pods. Some distance away, the TNM fleet hides behind the debris of Side 1, preparing their new weapon, the Solar Ray System, a massive array of mirrors. They are finally detected and must rush to fire before Zeon forces can reach them. With the mirrors perfectly aligned, space lights up with a huge, blinding beam like nothing we've seen before. It destroys everything in its path and blasts a hole inside of the once invincible Space Fortress Solomon. The fighting rages on, and the gun tank is badly damaged in a blast, wounding Hayato and forcing him to retreat to the White Base. When Fra hears, she asks Bright to allow her to leave the bridge and help Sunmalo in the infirmary. The inner halls of the White Base are full of the wounded, and Fra takes over looking after Hayato. Injured and exhausted, with tears in his eyes, Hayato admits to Fra that he feels pathetic, lying there while the others fight, never able to compete with Amuro and unable even to keep up with Kai and Sayla. Fra tries to comfort him, telling him that he cannot compare himself to Amuro, that Amuro is different from the rest of them. Dozle calls all Zeon forces back to Solomon itself in a last line of defense, but Amuro single-handedly destroys the ship blocking his path and enters through the gaping wreckage caused by the Solar Ray System. A flood of Jims and Balls follow him. Dozle finally requests backup from the 7th Division, Caecilia's forces, and they set a course for Solomon, full speed ahead, Char and Lala among them. Assuring her that Solomon will never fall, Dozle nonetheless tells his wife and her attendants to launch immediately in the escape pod and head for Caecilia's Granada base. Their safety secured, his focus returns to the battle. In the next episode, Slugger's G-fighter is hit, forcing him to return to the White Base. Bright tells an obviously fretful Mirai to go rest for a while relieving her from her duties on the bridge. She goes looking for Slugger, but when she finds him, can barely speak. She cries with relief that he's not injured, and as he heads to the hangar, she asks him not to die. He tells her not to trust her feelings in the chaos of battle, admits that he admires her, and asks her to hold on to a memento for him, a ring that belonged to his mother. As a blast hits the White Base, the two of them crash together, and they kiss before Slugger leaves to return to battle. A 7th Division fleet, quickly assembled by McVeigh, leaves Granada in an attempt to rescue Solomon. Inside Solomon, Federation mobile suits are having to fight their way in, hull by hull, against the Dom and Zaku defenders. All seems to be going well for the Federation until they encounter the new Big Zam, gigantic even for a mobile armor. It is commanded by Dozle himself, with 2 pilots operating the controls. Its powerful weapons destroy a group of Ball mobile suits in a single hit, and a powerful magnetic field protects it from long-range beam weapons. Amuro senses the terror of a nearby Jim pilot and goes to investigate. 3/4 of their fleet destroyed, Dozle's forces at Solomon attempt to charge and break through the Federation line. Amuro finally catches up to the Big Zam as it blasts off to lead the remaining Zakus and Doms out of Solomon. The Solar Ray System fires one last time, intent on being long gone before Caecilia's forces arrive. The Big Zam sets its sights on the command ship at the rear of the Federation forces, while the White Base and its mobile suits set their sights on the Big Zam. Mirai returns to her post on the bridge. Dozle orders all his remaining units to retreat and abandon Solomon, including the 2 pilots with him in the Big Zam. He will charge the Federation forces alone, taking as many of them down with him as he can. Amuro and Slegger form the G-Armor, aiming to get in close enough that their beam weapons will penetrate the Big Zam's magnetic field. It is likely a suicide mission, but after seeing the Big Zam destroy half a dozen ships single-handedly, Slegger is determined to stop it. They manage to get in close, but Slegger is killed before Amuro can land the finishing blow with his beam saber. Dozel stands atop the Big Zam as it slowly goes to pieces, firing his rifle at the Gundam. Amuro sees what can only be Dozel's fighting spirit, like a huge purple and black demon rearing up behind him, before the Big Zam explodes and Dozel is killed. The 7th Division has not made it in time. They have picked up the escape pod containing Dozel's wife and child and will search the area for survivors. On the White Base, the crew grieve their losses as they recover from their wounds and repair what they can. Having defeated the forces at Space Fortress Solomon, the White Base is sent on a mopping-up mission, tracking down any Zeon forces that escaped. Fra continues to assist in the infirmary, and while she runs some tests on Amuro, they talk for the first time in a long while. Amuro asks her how long it's been since they stopped talking. Fra, not looking at him, says that they've both been preoccupied with their work. Noting that all his medical tests are normal, Fra tells Amuro that he's become strong, almost frighteningly so. "You're far beyond my reach now," she says sadly, before putting on a happy smile and saying that she prefers him strong and brave, that they were all bound to grow up someday. Amuro apologizes, but Fra insists there's nothing to be sorry for. Before he leaves the infirmary, Fra asks Amuro if something happened to him on Side 6. He seems different. Amuro starts to tell her that nothing happened but stops himself, instead telling Fra that when he figures out how to talk about it, he will tell her. The White Base reaches the edge of the Texas Zone, a field of space debris around the Texas colony, originally built for leisure and for raising livestock, mostly abandoned since the war began. They spot a Chevet and suspect there are more Zeon forces hiding in the debris. The Chevet is not a ship that escaped Solomon, but is McVeigh, caught up to the Trojan horse at last. Launching his Richthoms and joining the battle himself in a custom-made Gyan mobile suit, McVeigh is determined to prove himself to Kycelia and show up Char. The Chevet is to keep the White Base occupied, while McVeigh sets a trap for the Gundam. The Richthoms lure the Gundam to McVeigh and his Gyan. Guns hidden in an asteroid fire on the Gundam, and McVeigh celebrates, thinking he has finally destroyed it. But his celebrations were premature, and he soon retreats to inside the Texas colony. The Gundam follows, its shadow streaming down the dark halls. Char's Zanzibar docks at the Texas colony. Lala's Elmeth is still not ready. They only have Char's Gelgug. The Texas colony is sunk in perpetual twilight, its mirrors damaged by the war, the land reduced to desert. Lala can feel something coming, but isn't sure what. Flanagan, the researcher who has been studying and working with Lala, checks his instruments, but he has never seen Lala's brainwaves resonate like this before. Char sets off in his Gelgug to keep an eye on McVeigh, while Lala, in her own vehicle, finds a spot from which to observe the battle. The Chevet, 2 Musai, and the remaining Richthoms keep the White Base and the rest of the Federation forces occupied, leaving Amuro to duel with McVeigh. As Amuro enters through an interior airlock, he is stunned and the Gundam thrown to the ground by an explosion, triggered by the opening door. McVeigh has left traps behind him. Dodging the Gyan's projectiles, Amuro soon finds himself in a field of tiny mines. None seem to damage the Gundam, but Amuro is knocked in every which direction. As Amuro and McVeigh approach each other, Char appears and begins to attack the Gundam himself. The Gyan jostles Char's Gelgug, and McVeigh tells Char to pull back. They argue, but Char finally agrees to leave McVeigh to it, secretly hoping that the Gundam will destroy McVeigh for him. The Gyan suddenly charges the Gundam. McVeigh has been keeping track, and knows that by now the Gundam will have exhausted the beam rifle's ammunition. They duel back and forth with their beam swords, McVeigh wondering how it's possible for the Gundam to anticipate all of his attacks. Perhaps the pilot is one of those new types. The Gundam finally tackles the Gyan, slicing through its back with the beam sabers. In that moment, Amuro hears Lala in his mind, telling him that he can stop now, that the battle is over. The Gyan explodes. Char rushes to where Lala is waiting, to shield her from the blast with his Gelgug. Amuro and Lala can still feel each other, even see each other's faces in their minds, and the episode ends with each feeling the other's name. Amuro. Ra. We begin, moments after the last episode ended, the Gyan's explosion breaching the colony, Char's Gelgug shielding Lala from the blast, Amuro on the Texas colony having just defeated McVeigh, and the White Base and McVeigh's fleet at a standstill, hiding in the debris field and waiting for the other side to make the first move. The White Base crew worry about Amuro but can do nothing. Anyway, Mirai is sure that Amuro is fine. When Fra presses her, "How can you know that?" Mirai responds that she just knows, somehow. The air is rapidly escaping from Texas Colony, causing blinding dust storms. Char sends Lala back to the Zanzibar. He will cover her escape. Amuro sees and feels Lala in the distance, but his focus on her allows Char to sneak up on him. With a spark in his eyes, he dodges just in time. The rough terrain and sandstorm provide plenty of ways to hide, and Char quickly disappears. Suspicious that the Gundam's pilot might be a new type, Char fires from hiding, moves, fires again, but the Gundam dodges nearly every shot. Finally, Amuro finds Char's hiding place and is able to sneak up on the Gelgoog. Amuro's abilities have improved beyond the Gundam's capacity. He begs it to respond faster. Char makes a mistake and Amuro lands a solid hit on the Gelgoog, but Char retreats and the Gundam's power is too low for pursuit. Commandant Joaquin's ship arrives in the zone around Texas, looking for the White Base, but finds a Zeon warship instead. The first exchange draws McVeigh's squadron out of hiding, and the White Base pounces. The G-Fighter's guns and the White Base's missiles make quick work of the Zeon ships. While Joaquin's battleship waits outside, the White Base enters Texas to retrieve Amuro. Unable to radio him, they send out buggies to search for the Gundam. However, as she searches, Sayla finds not Amuro, but Char. He seems angry that she is still in the military after he told her to quit during their last encounter. She confronts him about his own actions. She doesn't understand how he could join Zeon, even to get revenge on the Zabi family. Char insists that he has other, less petty goals. We learn that their father, Zeon Daikun, created the Principality of Zeon in the belief that humanity was destined to be reborn as new types, but that he was assassinated by Degwin Zabi, and soon after his allies died, one by one. Jimbaral, still loyal to their father, took Casval and Artesia to be raised on Earth, under assumed names for their own safety. Char may have originally joined Zeon with dreams of vengeance, but he has grown up and his goals have changed. Even if the Federation wins the war, it won't bring lasting peace because now, new types have appeared. Sayla begs Char to explain himself, to tell her what he's planning, but he only tells her that she must leave the White Base and return to Earth. "I am no longer the brother you once knew." "Do you know why I wear this mask?" he asks her. "It is because I have discarded my past. War doesn't suit you. Leave the White Base." With that, Char leaves her, disappearing into the storm as Sayla calls his name. Bright has heard the whole conversation through Sayla's open comm channel. Sayla finally finds Amuro. The Gundam is retrieved, the White Base takes off in pursuit of Char's Zanzibar, even as Joaquin goes to block its escape. On their way, the White Base encounters a small, signal-emitting object. Suspecting it might be a bomb, they stop to inspect it, but it is only a metal case with a note on the outside addressing it to Sayla. By the time the White Base reach Joaquin's ship, it is too late. The ship is completely destroyed and Char's Zanzibar is gone. The whole crew are in shock and Bright, weeping, salutes the ruined ship. Later, Bright confronts Sayla about the case. While he would be within his rights to inspect it, he would rather she tell him what it is and who sent it. It is a case full of gold, sent by Char so that Sayla can return to Earth and live out her life there. Alone in her quarters, Sayla weeps, thinking of the brother who is now truly lost to her. Space Fortress Solomon has been taken by the Federation and is serving as a new forward base in the war with Zeon. They await reinforcements for the final push, and Zeon's defeat seems imminent. But one day, they suddenly come under attack. Laser blasts come from nowhere and from every direction. In the command center, the comms officer hears something odd. He says it sounds like la la. Far in the distance, so far she cannot even see her targets. Lala sits in the Elmeth, controlling the bits as they attack Solomon. Char is impressed. The Elmeth and Lala are operating beyond his expectations. As the White Base approaches, Bright sees the blasts but no sign of the enemy. Mirai feels as though something is calling to them. The crew are ordered to level 1 battle stations and a stiff but mostly healed Hayato joins them. Bright checks on Sayla, worried about her after her encounter with Char, and concerned that she is trying to shoulder her troubles alone. Sayla, taking off in the G-Fighter, thinks that Bright no longer trusts her now that he knows her origins. A quick spark across Sayla's faceplate, just before one of the bits destroys another ship, tells us what we have long suspected. Sayla is also a new type. Amuro, trying to find the source of the attacks, feels it calling to him. Energy crackles across his eyes. In his mind, space goes red, and far in the distance, Lala is a glaring light. In a sudden flash, sparkling, colorful lights begin to flow past him until Lala appears, her form seeming to melt and fill his field of vision. Having pinpointed her location, he jets off to catch her. Lala stops her attack, momentarily shaken. From the effort of controlling the bits or a reaction to Amuro's own abilities, we cannot know. Char insists that she rest now, having already accomplished more than they anticipated. By the time Amuro reaches their former location, they are long gone. On Zeon, Girin Zabi meets with Lieutenant Shalia Bull, a veteran of the Zeon army who has recently returned from a mission to Jupiter. Girin informs Shalia that he is a new type. Shalia doesn't quite believe it, insisting he just has above-average intuition. But Zeon scientists have been studying Shalia in secret. Girin sends Shalia to join Caecilius' forces, and as he leaves, asks him to reflect on why he's been given these orders. It would seem that Shalia has become another pawn in the power struggle between the Zabi siblings. When he reaches Caecilius' forces, Shalia is given the Brabro to pilot. He meets Char and Lala, and can immediately sense a power coming from Lala. Char and Shalia feel each other out, attempting to ascertain the other's motives, all under the mask of a very friendly conversation. Back on the White Base, Sayla finally comes clean to Bright, telling him about her past and her brother, his plans, and his disgraceful perversion of her father's ideals. Sayla decides to stay on the White Base and continue to fight. Bright thinks she has chosen a difficult path but admires her strength, and promises to treat her the same as he always has. The Federation forces detect an incoming Zeon ship and send the White Base to intercept. It is Shalia Bull in the Brabro. The long, extendable arms of the Brabro allow it to attack from several directions at once, and Amuro struggles to dodge as the Gundam's reactions are too slow. Hayato, Sayla, and Kai attempt to provide support, but Amuro warns them away. Before they can retreat, Hayato is almost hit and the legs of the gun cannon are shot clean off. Focusing and using his new type abilities, Amuro is finally able to locate the control part of the Brabro. Shalia can sense this, but they do not retreat in time to avoid being destroyed by a perfectly targeted strike from the Gundam. After the battle, it is clear that the Gundam can no longer keep up with Amuro's constantly improving abilities. What will the Federation and the White Base do, now that their most advanced weapon is already obsolete? The White Base crew have returned to Solomon, where they think they have a solution for the Gundam's inability to keep up with Amuro. Dr. Mos Khan leads a group of technicians in modifying the Gundam with a magnetic coating, but there are no guarantees, and they haven't had time to test anything. Granada and Abawaku form two ends of the last line of defense for the Zeon homeland. Behind this line, Girin has ordered the evacuation of Mahal, one of Zeon's colony cylinders. Families are separated, forced to leave everything behind, and stragglers are beaten by soldiers. In the capital, Girin discusses his plans with Degwin. The evacuated colony will become a solar ray weapon and defend the rest of Zeon. As he listens to Girin's plans for population control, the promotion of so-called superior races, and total dictatorship, Degwin asks if Girin has ever heard of Adolf Hitler. Girin remembers him only vaguely, as a historical figure, but does not hesitate to call himself a follower of Hitler. He leaves the capital to take command of the forces at Abawaku. Lala has her first sortie against a small Federation force. Two Rickdoms are meant to provide her cover fire, while she attacks from behind them with the Elmeth's bits. But when they see Lala's abilities, the Rickdom pilots retreat, leaving Lala to face the ships alone. Under a barrage of constant fire, Lala is unable to control the bits effectively. It is not until Char joins her in his Gelgoob that she is able to concentrate again, destroying the last ship of the group. Federation forces are departing Solomon in 3 groups, all headed for the Zeon homeland. With the Gundam modifications finally complete, the White Base joins the rest of the fleet. As they approach the rendezvous point, they see that battle has already begun and quickly sortie their own forces. Almost immediately, Amuro can hear something calling to him, and can sense Lala and Char nearby. He soon finds himself face to face with both, fighting off nameless Rickdoms while he duels Char. Lala's focus is on defending Char, and she even warns him away from the noticeably stronger Gundam. Amuro manages to shoot off one of the Gelgoog's arms, and even uses his new type abilities to mentally attack Lala when she tries to intervene. While Amuro is destroying the Elmeth's bits, he suddenly hears Lala's voice in his head. "You're a bad person, bullying Char like this." Incredulous, he asks her, "Who are you calling bad?" Lala and Char retreat, and the White Base joins the rest of the fleet. In the next episode, Girin tells Degwin that the Federation is too weakened by the war to attack the Moon or Abawaku. He believes they will attack the Zeon homeland directly. Degwin argues that this is all the more reason to seek peace, and when Girin refuses, he goes behind Girin's back, attempting to meet with Federation Command and negotiate a peaceful end to the war. But the solar ray is ready, and Girin believes it will turn the tide in Zeon's favor. On her flagship, Kycelia discusses the plan for the upcoming battles with Char, before suddenly confronting him. She knows he is Kasval, and that until recently he planned to overthrow the Zabi family. Although she asks what made him abandon the plan, she does not demand an answer, instead telling him that such questions must wait until after the Federation is defeated. Char and Lala prepare to sortie, and Char tells Lala that while he is on the battlefield with her, he will follow her orders. She has surpassed him, as he always said she would. With a hand on her cheek, he kisses her. As he leaves, Lala gives her first order. He must wear a normal suit in battle from now on. The battle is chaotic, with dozens of ships and mobile suits on both sides. Amuro struggles to hit the bits, until he focuses and brings his new type abilities to bear. Suddenly, he can sense where the bits will be, and hits them every time. Forced to fight at shorter range, Lala fires the Elmeth's guns at Amuro. In the heat of battle, the two seem to see and hear each other in short bursts. Amuro asks Lala why she fights, and she tells him it is to defend Char. She asks how he can fight like this, when he has no family or homeland to defend or protect. It's unnatural. Around them, the fighting continues. In a moment of particular connection, the two see each other as if they were floating in space, without mobile suit or mobile armor. Amuro asks Lala again, is there no other reason she fights? Is it only for Char? Does it mean nothing that the two of them met? Lala wonders if this is destiny, but if it is, then life is too cruel. The connection between Amuro and Lala causes a reaction, a small spark of mental energy in nearby new types. Sayla, Mirai, and for the first time, Char. Amuro insists that they are all burdened by their own fate and have to accept it. An image of waves slowly rises from the bottom of the screen, crashing back and forth and filling our vision. Lights flash and converge, and Lala and Amuro appear superimposed over each other. Char and his Gelgoog rush in, breaking the connection between the two. As the Gundam fights him off, Char asks a pensive, distracted Lala for guidance. They continue to fight, each pushing the limits of their abilities and their mobile suits, until finally Amuro gets the upper hand. With a clear line to a killing blow, he drives forward with his beam saber, but at the last moment Lala pilots the Elmeth into his path. She gives her life to save Char. Amuro cries out, and the crushing, suffocating waves of fate begin to cover him. In the moments before she dies, Lala speaks to Amuro in their minds. As he weeps, they talk about the future of humanity, and how there is hope because they were able to understand each other. Still, Amuro cries. He has done something he can never take back. The Federation has won this battle. Only Kycelia's Guazin remains on the Zeon side. They receive orders from Abawaku that the solar ray will fire soon, targeting one of the 3 Federation fleets, and they must move out of its path. The white base has fallen behind, but as they rush to catch up with the rest of the fleet, Amuro runs onto the bridge yelling that they have to stop, have to go back, that ahead, people are melting in a whirlpool of light. The solar ray tears through the fleet near Geldorva, including Federation High Command, General Revel, and Sovereign Degwin. Ships, mobile suits, and people are obliterated in a blinding field of light. The crew of the white base are near enough to see it happen, and with his new senses, an overwhelmed Amuro can only say, not all of them are gone, but... As they prepare to defend Abawaku, Girin gives a speech to his own forces, emphasizing the righteousness of the Zeon cause. The Federation is severely weakened, he tells his army, mere debris, and it is the destiny of the superior race of Zeon to defeat them and to safeguard humanity's survival. Thrown into a state of chaos, the Federation fleet scrambles to reorganize their forces. Once organized, they prepare to attack, and it is clear that they have been severely weakened. Amuro encourages everyone. The fortress may seem strong, but it has weaknesses, and they will succeed. When Bright asks him if this is new type intuition, Amuro says yes. Before leaving the bridge, Amuro says goodbye to Fra. They encourage each other, and she reminds him not to do anything crazy. Hayato also goes to speak to Fra, and it is clear, from his body language and the gossip of the orphans, that he has feelings for her. On their way to level 1 battle stations, Amuro, Kai, and Sayla talk. Kai asks if what Amuro said on the bridge is true, and Amuro admits that it was a lie. Sayla stands up for him. If Amuro hadn't lied, the crew could have panicked. The battle has begun in earnest. The sheer number of vessels and mobile suits is staggering, and missiles and beam weapons fire in all directions. Girin watches it all from the command center of Abawaku, surprised by the ferocity of the Federation after losing the core of their forces. Kycilia arrives to join him. Accompanying her, Char laments that all of the new Gelgoogs have already been launched, but she offers him a new mobile suit, the Zeong, which partially utilizes the Psychomu system of the Elmeth, similar to the Brabro. But it isn't 100% complete and no one has ever launched in it. Against a backdrop of constant explosions and fierce combat, Girin orders the launch of his newest, most powerful ship, the Dolos. He laughs to himself, convinced that Zeon's forces are overwhelming the opposition. Even when Federation reinforcements arrive, he insists that Zeon still has the advantage. By this time, Char has launched in the Zeong, leading a division of mobile suits, but really on the lookout for the Gundam. Amuro can tell that it's Char, but as they begin to fight each other, he reminds himself that his mission, landing on Abawaku, is more important than his rivalry. After he sets off, Char continues to prowl the battlefield looking for him. Back in the command center, Girin is pleased at the Dolos' performance in battle. Kycilia asks him about the Great Degwin, Sovereign Degwin's flagship, and he makes no effort to hide what happened. Their father, Sovereign Degwin, took the ship and tried to negotiate a peace. Nothing would have resulted from an ill-timed peace initiative, an unrepentant Girin tells Kycilia, making clear that he fired the solar ray knowing it would kill their father. Kycilia shoots him in the back of the head. The stunned crew freeze. Kycilia yells that even the Supreme Commander shouldn't get away with patricide. Anyone who disagrees is welcome to file charges after the battle. As they all stand staring, they receive word that the Dolos fleet has been defeated, and the command center shakes as a nearby explosion opens cracks in the walls. The commander died honorably in battle, one crew member declares, before turning to Kycilia for orders. Federation mobile suits manage to land on Abawaku. Kycilia notes that the Zeon mobile suit pilots are not fighting well, and is informed that most of them are student recruits, fresh out of training. One such pilot, caught in the crossfire when Char finally finds Amuro, screams for his mother before his Zaku explodes. The two continue to duel back and forth, slowly destroying each other's mobile suits as the larger battle plays out around them. When they fight in closer range, they are able to talk, just as Amuro and Lala were. "Why did you get Lala involved? Lala was never meant to be a warrior." Char, startled and angry, pushes the Gundam away. As he struggles, frustrated with the limited effect of his own new type abilities, Char wonders how he can possibly beat Amuro. Alone in the cockpit of the Zeong, he asks Lala to tell him what to do. After several bad hits, the White Base is forced to cut engine power and crash land on Abawaku. The crew prepare for hand-to-hand combat as Kai and Hayato run up to provide cover in their mobile suits. Amuro is able to take Char by surprise, landing a direct hit on the Zeong's torso. But unlike other mobile suits so far, that is not where the cockpit is. The head of the Zeong ejects, taking Char to safety while the rest of the MS explodes. With its lone gun, the Zeong head destroys the head of the Gundam before flying away. In the command center of Abawaku, it is clear that the tide of battle has turned. Kycilia makes arrangements for her own escape and orders her lieutenant to surrender the base 15 minutes after she gets away. She promises to free him through a prisoner exchange, but it is crucial that she get away while Granada and the Zeon homeland still have some fighting strength left. Pursuing Char into Abawaku, Amuro wonders why Char fights against him. Clearly the Zabis are the real enemy. He sets the Gundam to a rudimentary autopilot before ejecting, and watching it walk down a hall before firing straight up a passageway. Fire is immediately returned, and the two mobile suits, finally crippled by damage. Amuro can sense that the Zabi leader is nearby, but before he can pursue them, Char confronts him. Amuro is still furious that Char drew Lala into the war, but Char counters that Amuro is misguided. Without the war, Lala's new type powers would never have developed. Char advances on Amuro. "New types like you are too dangerous now. I will kill you." The two begin firing at each other, moving through the low-gravity interior of Abawaku on jetpacks, until Amuro manages to hit Char. Blood goes streaming and Char retreats, with Amuro hot on his heels. The gun cannon and gun tank are too damaged to continue fighting, and Hayato and Kai eject to begin hand-to-hand combat. Nearby, the G-fighter crash lands, and Sayla, sensing Char, moves quickly and carefully into Abawaku to find him. The clash of swords greets her. In a strangely opulent room, Char and Amuro continue their duel. Though she calls out to both, begging them to stop, they cannot hear her. In the same moment, each lands a dangerous blow. Amuro to the faceplate of Char's helmet, which cracks before deflecting the blade, and Char to Amuro's shoulder, where the blade goes straight through before breaking. The two crash into each other, and their minds connect in a stream of colored lights. Amuro says that Lala has told him something, that new types aren't meant to be tools for destroying each other. Char responds that in the battlefield they are powerful weapons, that's just how it is. A blast knocks Sayla into the two of them, breaking their connection. Sayla begs them to stop fighting, to realize that they don't have to be enemies. Char believes that once Zeon is defeated, humanity will enter the age of new types. He hopes that Amuro can understand what he is trying to do, and that they won't have to be enemies. Another explosion rocks the base, and they are separated. Amuro launched down a hallway, and Sayla slammed into a wall, rescued from another explosion by her brother. When she has recovered, Char encourages her to escape and to go live a good life free from war. Amuro is calling you, he tells her, and he takes off his mask, replaces his helmet, and goes to settle the score with Caecilia. He arrives in the hangar as they are counting down to takeoff, salutes the ship with a wry smile, and fires a bazooka, hitting Caecilia square in the head. The constant explosions rocking Abawaku make it impossible to navigate. Sayla and Amuro are stranded, unable to return to the White Base. Amuro finally manages to return to the remnants of the Gundam, and may be able to escape, but he worries for Sayla and the White Base crew. Getting into the cockpit of the core fighter, with Lala's theme playing in the background, he wonders if he is about to join her. Suddenly he can hear her, and asks her what he should do. She reminds him that they can be together anytime. In his mind, he can see the White Base crew fighting for their lives, as Zeon soldiers storm the White Base itself. With his new type powers, he calls out to them, guiding Sayla to safety, telling Hayato and Kai when to retreat, telling Fra and the orphans when it will be safe to run, and warning Bright and Mirai that they will have to get the crew to escape pods and abandon the White Base. They are all safely away when the White Base erupts in a series of explosions and is completely destroyed. But where is Amuro? No one can hear him, even Sayla and Mirai with their own new type abilities. All of them are staring into the chaos and destruction of Abawaku, desperate for a sight or sound of their friend, when the orphans call out, "A little to the right, now straight, this way, you're almost outside. 3, 2, 1, 0! Amuro manages to escape and rejoin his friends. He cries with relief and tells Lala, "I'm sorry. I still have a place to go home to, and nothing could make me happier. You understand, don't you?" Universal Century 0080. After this battle, a peace treaty is concluded between the Earth Federation and the Republic of Zeon.